When he's cutting these editing these 5-hour podcasts, gotta do what you
His
can.
immediate response when I sent him the email with the last one was a cry emoji.
Oh no!
I was like, I'm so sorry, Matt.
Oh my god.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Men of Steel podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, J. Mike Folsom.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today's going to be a great one. I'm excited.
Yes, because we are continuing our conversation about the death and return of Superman, this time actually talking about the return of the real Superman. And to continue that conversation, we are joined yet again by Zach Herring.
Hello, everybody. Stoked to be back again. And for those of you looking forward to a break, sorry, you're going to have to wait another week. I'm so sorry. One more week, and then you'll be rid of me for another 6 months.
Well, we've got way more material coming up, but in the meantime, we want to keep the conversation going about the comics part about the return of Superman. And this is this is a shift in storytelling that I think it makes sense that it is now collected in two separate trades, whereas the version that I have from back in the day is just one giant, like super thick Watchmen thickness level trade. Mm-hmm. Although actually now that I think about it, it's more issues than Watchmen by a considerable margin.
Yes.
So that all makes sense, because whereas the first chunk that we looked at last time was each of the respective Superman books that were running at the time doing their own thing with these like imposter Supermen, this is where the issues now start to flow together as one continuous story, just with 4 different creative teams working on it each week. And you can really tell that because the opening thing that happens when we pick up with Action Comics 689 is the Hobbs Neck Bridge, their Brooklyn Bridge equivalent for Metropolis, being blown up at the end of the Adventures of Superman issue that we concluded last time with. Does this make sense given some of the books that we have in here to start the trade? That is debatable.
No, I thought I was missing an issue. I literally thought I was missing an issue.
More, I'm thinking of the Bloodline annuals that pop up.
Yeah, those make even less sense in this context.
Yeah. So this issue is, however, a direct continuation of that Adventures of Superman issue, wherein Superboy, because we're just going to call him Superboy now. I'm sorry. There's no way. And Supergirl were fighting Stinger, the Spider-Man knockoff assassin that was sent to kill him as a publicity stunt. And when he escaped, he blew up the bridge. And so we open with the two heroes actively trying to save people who had fallen off the bridge into the water. And so we're getting a bit more of Tana Moon responding to things. And frankly, this is, I think, probably the first time Tana Moon is being drawn by someone who isn't Tom Grummett, because she's a character that first appeared in Adventures of Superman. So we're starting to see more bleed between the different books.
Yeah, that's what I loved particularly about this. This one is that you get to see a whole bunch of the characters that you grew to love in the previous giant omnibus, and then like get to see them rendered by other people, like Boggs, my man Boggs, getting to like draw Eradicator and stuff like that. It's just really cool. And this was kind of the start of it. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, Superboy showed up in Superman the Man of Steel last time. And that was the only real crossover that we got. And even that one was the one that made sense. It was the two that weren't really pretending to be the original Superman. So there was no like friction from that. And it was two different vibes. Like one is like Superman in powers, but not in terms of personality or memories. And the other one was Superman in spirit. And that team up worked very well. And spoiler alert, they will continue to keep teaming up over the course of many, many decades of comics.
Spoilers.
But not everyone on this of these pretenders would join that particular team.
Is it really spoilers? It's been like 30 years at this point, I think.
I know.
Well, then again, people still haven't watched a lot of the movies, so yeah.
Yeah, so we see Superboy and Supergirl jump into saving things. We have a spot where Supergirl uses her telekinesis to actually prevent a truck from going off the edge. And aside from Superboy's extremely misogynistic dialogue that they're writing for this, where he's like, nice work, Super Babe.
And hitting on her
you've
while
got moves
people
I
are
didn't even
dead.
suspect.
Yeah.
Right. He's like actively doing that while like there are people like buried in the water.
People literally dying, and he's like, Super Babe. Amazing.
Yeah, like there's a lot of spots where they're trying to be like, this is a 90s kind of thing, like, whoa, Demolition City, and then like, wow, still kicking after a little tumble like that. Something like this must sure make you a believer in airbags. Whoa, because you can't help but like kind of do specifically this Superboy dialogue that way, and I feel like it's especially when it's not Carl Kiesel writing it, where it's like goes really into like 90s isms, because that like he's Poochie to a certain degree, like. Where it's like, how can we make Superman cool, or Superboy cool? But meanwhile, we're getting this news report, and it cuts over to the fortress, and we're just gonna get right into it. That Kryptonian healing matrix that they kept referring to explodes outwards, and from it emerges a black-clad, very clearly Superman figure. The only question is this yet another pretender, or is it the original? But he seems to be on point pretty fast. Like the issues start. They do this thing where they like lower the lights. His eyes might be too weak, and you think, oh, could this be Eradicator? But like,
I thought it was.
Nothing's happened to the Eradicator at this point, or nothing's happened to the last son of Krypton at this point. So he's out there still. So there's like this emergence of a character is fine. Like there's like, but there's no real deception at play, even though there's some beats that feel like they're trying to deceive us into thinking it's still the same last son of Krypton character, because there's nothing for the misdirect.
They're like, they kind of heavily shadow his eyes on a couple of spots, and like they actually have like a photocopy of Eradicator and Clark Kent to show that they're exactly the same person, or at least like the same visage, you know.
Yeah, when he gets the rundown on all the different Supermen, they do the last son of Krypton, and then they show him looking up at the screen, and their faces are in the same perspective, and it's like, yep, that's the exact same face. Which, yeah, I mean, like that's the thing. We have to emphasize that, especially the Eradicator and the Cyborg Superman, but especially the Eradicator had Superman's exact face. Like that wasn't like he just kind of looked like a Kryptonian, or like was a different actor playing the part, but it was the same like Superman type. Like he had Superman's exact face, at least at this point. Mm-hmm. Which is why it was so confusing for people, because it wasn't just kind of similar. It was, no, that's a person that we know.
Yeah, that's literally
exactly like it.
And if you think about it, right, like in Reign of Superman, Lois had questions. Like she recognized him as Clark. Yeah. And the reason why she didn't verify him as the real Superman is because he basically said, like, yeah, I remember you used to be important to me, but not anymore. And then he flew off, right? And so we knew, even tracing back to that first issue of Reign of Superman, that he looked like Clark Kent, even if he wasn't necessarily exactly Clark Kent. And I really liked kind of like repeating a lot of those motifs here. To kind of like, yeah, and honestly, like making use of the photocopier so that like it's not even leaving it up to chance that the artist can draw the same face exactly the same, right? Like they just photocopies it to really drive that home. I think is really good storytelling on this.
Yeah, the shading is exact between the two. Like every line of detail is the exact same. Like even there are lines on his like exposed neck that match the lines on the blue fabric of the Eradicator.
Exactly, just perfect, absolutely perfect. Really, he just kind of like shoehorns in some glasses, and then he calls it good on the Eradicator side.
Right. And this outfit that we're seeing, it's a variation on the Kryptonian outfits that we had seen in the past. It is the undersuit that they wear under normally like the longer robes, and then when Superman had been possessed by the Eradicator, he wore a version of that then with the red body stripe like kind of attached to it already. But this is just like that base outfit without any of the extra stuff on top. So it's like it's the equivalent of like the outfit that like Zod wears, or honestly the Superman uniform in Man of Steel, the movie. Like in terms of it being oh, this is our base Kryptonian outfit.
It's got some really nice frills on the shoulders.
Yeah, that's like a part of like just Kryptonian design, according to John Byrne.
I wasn't sure if that was part of the costume or part of him being in the healing matrix.
No, it's in all the Kryptonian outfits that of the Byrne school of design.
And you think about like the Christopher Reeves movie, right? Like they had that almost like crinkly almost a crinkly fabric to it, which is what this reminds me of. Like, it feels definitely Byrne influenced, but also feels very much influenced by the Superman movie of that.
And Byrne was influenced by that movie, but he wasn't allowed to legally use the exact things from that movie when he was doing the Man of Steel relaunch. Right. So he tried to invoke them without having it be a thing that the Salkin brothers could, or the Salkin family could could sue him for.
Gotcha.
So they couldn't quite do that. So Superman gets up to speed. This is Superman. We're just not. It
is. We're not going to pretend anymore.
Like he very clearly like his personality is like, while he's confused and disoriented, he has both an inquisitiveness about the world, a general sense of morality. He comes off very much more like Superman from the get-go. Like, everything about the way he holds himself plays the way you would expect Superman to at this time in the comics. But he gets up to speed on all of the things that have been going on, like the cults that have been forming worshiping Superman, the fact that there are multiple duplicates, the fact that they've been involved in all these like fucked up, or rather fuck ups in terms of trying to save lives that end in like major landmarks being destroyed and people dying. And if they really wanted to try to tie in shit, they could have talked about how there's a homeless or a problem with homeless people being murdered in Metropolis right now, but no one wants to remember that unless you're actually in the annual itself.
Right.
So, moving on. It cuts back over to the bridge, and this is why I say it's really picking up as in terms of being one story across multiple issues, because plot thread, like this scene that happens next, you would expect to happen over in Adventures of Superman, but that's going to be 3 issues from now, so they don't have time to still deal with those like old lingering issues. Like, everything immediately gets picked up in the next issue after that, like the next issue in the story, like keeps on going. This is one giant story. So Superboy has to reveal to Supergirl that he got swindled into signing a contract with Rex Leach instead of Lex Luthor. And Lex is not pleased
at all. Which is great. Yeah.
Which
is great. This is like that's one of my favorite ongoing subplots in this, is the agent woes of Superboy, and I really appreciate it every time it pops up in any of these issues. Is fantastic.
I still love the fact that he's got that whole head and shoulders hair.
The Lex Luthor look,
the Maybelline.
Well, I like that Lex is then like, I'm going to sue him to oblivion. He's technically a minor because he's a clone. He can't have signed any contracts that were legally binding.
That's also just a wonderful idea for just a wonderful plot point, right? Lex has probably spent millions, if not billions, of dollars cloning Superboy, and then suddenly to lose out all the rights of his multi-billion-dollar investment is kind of awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, that part is a retcon to a certain degree. Like, while he had financial ties to Cadmus, he did not know that they were doing this project.
Oh, really?
Or at least not directly. Okay. Yeah. That's a retcon that happens later, because at this point Superboy is actually not Kryptonian. They will reveal that very shortly after, like, it's like the next issue of Adventures of Superman after this trade collects, where he is human modified to resemble Kryptonian, because the rules were they weren't allowed to have other Kryptonians. That's why Supergirl is a protoplasmic entity. That's why, like, even like the closest we get is technically the Cyborg, and that's still like, oh well, it's a mad guy with
spoilers,
Kryptonian intelligence.
Yeah. Like, oh my god,
even the Eradicator isn't allowed to actually be Kryptonian. From now.
Yes, yeah. It's just, and it's all Kryptonian, all Kryptonian. Technology too. It's not like actual biology. Right. I mean, I think he was simulating some of the biology, but most of it was just the technology that they were using to fool the White House.
Yeah. So, like, in this scenario, Lex Luthor, while he put money towards it, the Superboy that was created is actually based at this time on Paul Westfield, the director of Cadmus, and his DNA is modified to present traits that look like Superman, and then emulate the force field that Superman creates that has been modified to being strictly telekinetic. Which we will develop over time. We jump over to Ma and Pa Kent, mad about how Superboy fucked up stuff, and is also kind of mad that Matrix is also kind of a fuck up now that she's under Lex Luthor's influence. And this is all appropriate. It makes sense that they would be really upset that their son's name is being tarnished so terribly by not 1, not 2, but 4 pretenders.
4 pretenders, yeah.
Pa was all like, maybe I suck at raising girls. I never raised a girl before. I was like, dang, man.
Yeah, that was pretty heartbreaking. Absolutely.
I mean, look at the way like Supergirl is acting when she's around Superboy, and then the next page when she's around Lex. And in both cases, she's like fawning all over both of them. And it seems Like, yeah, Pa, you kind of fucked up raising your daughter.
What? Fawning one over seems 10 years younger, and then the other seems at least 10 years older. It's very interesting, actually, the age disparities between the love interests here.
Anyway, so they cry, and then we cut over to the Man of Steel dealing with gang violence, because that's his beat.
Sam? I'm going to keep saying that every time.
But at this point, also, this is another again, we're just jumping right into a different Superman being drawn by a different artist than what we had been seeing so far. And this is when the Eradicator shows up, and the Eradicator kills someone who was going to shoot at the Man of Steel, but the Man of Steel is like, why did you fucking murder him? I'm in a suit of armor, you douchebag. Mm-hmm. Like Superman shouldn't kill, and like, I'm wearing this in tribute to him, and you're just murdering people while wearing his face. And that seems kind of not the way Superman would want it to be. And the Eradicator has no chill and just immediately puts him through a wall.
Yep. And calls a totally normal dude in a suit of armor a freak for some reason.
Yeah. We cut over to Lois and Jimmy having a catch-up, and they're just kind of generally going over the various angst that Lois is feeling, while then all of a sudden there's commotion and they run outside and they find out that the two Supermen are fighting. This is interesting, or I found this interesting. This being Action Comics, this is technically the Last Son of Krypton's book. So in this book, it feels like he has the upper hand. And the second we switch over, it feels like Steel takes the lead.
Which I was thinking about that. Each of them, it was really fun to see each of the artists draw the different Supermen. But you could definitely tell, I loved how they saved the most heroic poses for the leads in the book, which totally makes sense, right? Like it's very aligned. And even if you look at this, like, I feel like Geis is almost drawing Steel. Like you can kind of see the Bogdanov influence of Steel in kind of the Geis drawings here, like how he's handling the cross hatching and everything. And yeah, I love kind of like how power dynamics shift as soon as it jumps to another title. It was really interesting.
Yeah, because like the Eradicator is, while his powers are slightly different than normal Superman, like it's a caliber above what a person in a suit can live up to. Like even as impressive a work as the Steel suit is, it's just not going to live up to a Kryptonian. Like it's just not. So Eradicator is not having too hard of a time. Like he's smacking Steel around. Steel is like putting up a fight, but like not doing too much. And that's when Lois runs in and is like, "What the fuck are you guys doing?"
She's really walking.
Steel's like, "Shit, you're right. Like I didn't throw the first punch, but you're right. I shouldn't have thrown a punch at all, because I should be living up to the lessons of Superman." But the Eradicator is also kind of getting through as well. And like we've seen that the Eradicator, or not getting through, it's like she's getting through to the Eradicator. Right. Like we have seen that he realizes when things go too far. As we talked about last time, when Guy Gardner was like, "You have my support," he was like, "What the fuck have I done? Oh my God, am I the baddie?"
Yeah, the wrong people like me. Exactly. He's already, and there's like this plays later into it, and I'm going to save it for later. But I do like the Eradicator's like almost like slow motion redemption is actually one of my favorite things about this series, the previous series and this series. It's really interesting.
Yeah, because he actually does have all of Superman's memories, more or less. Mm-hmm. He's psychically linked to Superman, and previously was possessing Superman. Yeah. Like his first actual body he manifested was just Clark's, and he had just possessed Clark, and that's a whole arc. So like him slowly starting to understand how those memories play out and having them give him emotional responses to things is a part of him learning to be not exactly an organic being, because in this case he's still a construct to a certain degree, but he's less of a construct than when he was like that energy form Krypton man. So he is starting to be a thing. On that note, though, I would like to point out that we do have a John Henry facing off against an artificial creation that is supposed to replace him at this point. And that becomes they go hard on it once he fights the Cyborg, who is the same deal. Yeah. But like this is a foreshadowing of that relationship of the folklore that is tying into the fantasy, like the superheroic fantasy that is Steel. And I find that kind of cool that we're getting a subtle moment for that here.
Yeah, that's a really good. I hadn't even caught that. That's a really good. That's a really good catch on the Eradicator side.
Again, they're super explicit later with the cyborg stuff, but here it is actually still in play. Or with the Eradicator being a fake Superman, and him being, I'm trying to live up to Superman with my hammer. Like it's really there. But then additional tie-in stuff. Superboy's lawyer shows up, or to serve them papers for cease and desist, or be sued for infringement on the Superman trademark. And that pisses off the Eradicator. He does not care for someone being like, you're not Superman legally. He's like, what do you mean I'm not legally? And he sets the papers on fire, and he's about to kill the guy. And that's when Steel jumps in, being like, what the fuck are you doing? Again, this whole book is like people telling the Eradicator, what the fuck are you doing? Every time the Eradicator shows up, it's usually to have people tell him, what the fuck are you doing? This is a terrible plan. So Steel grabs him, and they fly up into the atmosphere. And while they're flying, the Eradicator decides to speed them up. And so they go from what is technically Delaware, and they go across the country to California. Meanwhile, we get a little interlude where we see that alien warship that they teased at the end of the Adventures of Superman issue. I knew who he was before I read this issue, so there's no spoiler in terms of who the character is.
I thought it was somebody else.
I thought it was Darkseid.
Me too. Wasn't.
Yeah. I totally thought it was Darkseid.
Oh, it's the face.
Yeah. It's how he's.
That's the dime store Darkseid.
It's the dime store Darkseid. The way he's standing in front of Earth, he's got his hands behind his back.
Exactly.
Everything. I saw he kind of has the I can't remember the dude's name in Star Wars, but he has kind of a weird thing around his forehead.
Oh yeah, the guy from Cloud City.
Yes, the guy from Cloud City. He's kind of got that thing going. I was like, well, I guess it's not Darkseid, but it looks like the color and everything's Darkseid. So yeah, I totally thought it was Darkseid.
The only thing that made me question it was the ship. I was like, I've never seen Darkseid.
That technology doesn't look apocalyptic.
It looks more like
it looks like a different type of space faring civilization.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there is the yellow coloring, so if you're particularly familiar with all these characters, that part would pop out at you, but it's yellow and purple, so it is the right colors for the character when you get the little bit of it. But it is fairly well shaded, and if you had no idea going in, and it's been a couple years since Mongol showed up last in these books. He showed up in the initial story that led to Superman's exile after he killed the Kryptonian Zod and crew from the Pocket universe. He went into exile in space because he felt that Superman shouldn't kill, and so he left Earth. And during that time, it's when he became a prisoner of Mongol that he got the Eradicator in the first place. So, but that's been a while because that story happened well before the Eradicator tried to take over Earth and well before the Eradicator came back. And all of that was at this point, several years. So Mongol has not been really seen since then. And he's a villain that is a lesser known Superman villain up until more recently, because he's huge arc recently with Mongol. But most people know him at this point from the extremely famous Superman annual that Alan Moore wrote, for the Man Who Has Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Wherein he took on the Silver Age Superman, which is, pretty impressive from a physical proof standpoint. But currently there's the War World Rising arc that just ended that Philip Kennedy Johnson did, which was fantastic. And Mongol remained a player in the DC world after this arc because he all of a sudden became a villain for a different superhero by the end of the story.
Right. Yeah, good foreshadowing.
But so we know that alien ship is coming.
Yeah, great foreshadowing from previous. That's it. And just kind of this, I feel like, is where it transitions, or really the previous issues where it transitions from each one being kind of a separate story or a separate series to each one leading directly into the others. And it just kind of creates this amazing driving momentum as you build to Superman's resurrection.
Yeah, I mean, the Boy Meets Girl issue of Adventures of Superman, because that cliffhanger leads directly into this one, you could argue that issue should go here. Mm-hmm. But this is the issue also where Superman actually properly comes back.
Yeah.
So, which I feel like people don't really bring this issue up specifically because it's Superman is reborn in this issue, but it's kind of it's still a little bit of a mystery. It's still we're not quite sure what's going on. Right. Even though it's fairly explicit, he's not, They've all been fairly explicit at this point. But so the two crash land now in Coast City, California. And that's where the issue ends with giant crater. No one could have survived that except a Superman.
Is Coast City LA or is it San Diego?
So I'm not entirely sure what it's directly supposed to be, because it's like it's the Green Lantern city, so there is a vibe of it being kind of an LA type city, but it's also supposed to be famous for like airstrips being nearby because he's a test pilot. I don't know. Like it's not LA. Like it's not, as far as I know, like the center of like the movie industry. So I'm not sure. And like also because like the thing is like I just joked about Metropolis technically being in Delaware, like there is also New York.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like, or is it San Francisco? I'm not actually sure.
No.
But either way, it's a city on the coast called Coast City that is in California. And we jump over to Superman, the Man of Steel. Like I said, the fight goes just immediately 180s in terms of who's like got the upper hand, because Steel no sells one of the blasts from the last son of Krypton, walks up, punches him in the face, and knocks off his glasses, and then just like with him disoriented because he can't see, just lays into him. And it's like just an instant change in terms of who's the person winning this fight.
Yeah, and this is also one of the best double page spreads in the entire series. Like this just looks so good from the energy blast in the first panel all the way down. Like you've just got this fantastic shot of Steel. Just crushing, basically just taking a pounding to Eradicator. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, he punches him so hard that it breaks off like the arm gun. With that first punch.
Yeah. And the next shot too, right? You've got Eradicator like kind of like on his knees in front of Steel as he's just continuing to punch his face, and it looks so good.
It's just so abrupt, like because it went from being like, oh yeah, Steel can't keep up with the last son of Krypton, that he's so powerful. They're in space, and now the last son of Krypton is propelling them so fast that Steel can barely like process what's going on. Crash land, switch the book. Oh, now
Never mind.
Now Steel's winning.
Yeah. Yep. No, it's fantastic. So and then he flies away, covering his eyes. And then you've got you've got him making an escape.
Yeah, but he's thinking like, I'll stick around and like protect around here for a little bit. Go back to Metropolis, Steel. There must be more to being Superman. Like again, the Eradicator is starting to feel feelings. Like he's starting to think that he should be better. That like his interaction with Lois just now like was one step of that. Again, the Are We the Baddies moment with Guy Gardner was another one of those.
Am I the bad guy?
Exactly. And he does respect Steel is the other part of it all. Now, the reason he respects Steel seems to be more because the book tells us he respects Steel rather than like because we didn't see much beyond the fight itself. Like in the last issue, there was the moment of Steel being upset because he threatened someone else. But
it's telling you via inner monologue, and I feel like this book has made a really solid case for me anyway in terms of bringing back the thought balloon, because there was really some excellent moments here that I don't think would have worked with modern comic book storytelling. You like no thought balloons, just like said out loud and then captions to kind of like cover some of that up, telling it from like the different person's perspective. I really liked how they were able to switch from different people's perspectives kind of simultaneously. And this was one of them, right? Where you're kind of learning that he has this sort of like growing respect for Steel.
Yeah. It's interesting how they convey both for Steel and then when we get Superman, there's this like flavor of character. There's like this charisma to them that make people really look up to them. Like Superboy, even though he like has moments of bite like grinding up against Steel in the earlier crossover, he still is like, no, Steel just gave talking to me. Fuck, like I have to listen to this guy. And it's like, well, why? Who is this guy? You've never met him. He's not like an established superhero. He's a new guy on the street also. But at the same time, like he just conveys this nobility that people look up to. And apparently that goes for the last son of Krypton as well. This is our chance to get John Bogdanov doing the last son of Krypton here, and we get a couple shots of him getting his ass whooped. And the best like full body is when he's like flying off, although he's like covering his face because his visor's broken.
Right. Yeah. It, again, just looks fantastic. I mean, he draws such incredibly dynamic figures. And in the Action Comics where you saw Geist, I feel like definitely emulating a bit of Bogdanov's style, but it's hard to replicate just kind of the dynamism here on the page with him, especially with the shapes. I love on this one where he's holding the capes on either corner. You get these amazing edges on his shoulder pads, right? Like that's kind of like coming off. It almost kind of has like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shredder vibe, which you don't see in some of the other. You don't see in whenever other people draw him. Sometimes you don't even see it whenever Bogdanov draws it. There's kind of like a little fluidity, kind of like with the character sheets. I feel like a little bit, but man, it looks so good.
Yeah. So he leaves. We cut over back to Metropolis. Team Luthor breaks in on White Rabbit, and they agree to parlay.
Do a parlay,
more or less.
Yeah. Do a parlay. You've got I loved. I think one of my favorite shots in here was the shot of Supergirl on Lex's desk.
Yes, again, that one I see a lot when you do a search for the Matrix era Supergirl. Like that particular her sitting on the desk with her legs crossed.
Right. He basically blacks out the entire panel at the bottom, so you're given like this all white shot up above for the sky. You have all black down for the panel to kind of like ground to give us a base, sort of like visual base. And you've got Lex's luscious locks, head and shoulders. He's just a mane. He just looks like he looks like a mane of hair, like he was a lion, and it all looks so good.
Yeah,
she actually really reminds me. Again, I think I said this in the previous episode, but specifically how she is kind of like positioned her shoulders and kind of like her arms really reminds me not of Miller in Dark Knight Return, or sorry, DKR 2. Basically, like where he got a lot more expressionistic. It was like post Sin City stuff, and he was trying to convey kind of like the characters in as few lines as possible. Really reminds me of like some of the stuff he did with Supergirl in that book as well. So it's really interesting to see.
So Supergirl flies in on the back half of the conversation where Lex is basically setting up both the Man of Steel to think he owes Lex a favor, but not realize that he owes Lex a favor directly, by way of like keeping it kind of his like direct involvement out of it being official, while at the same time being able to guarantee exactly where the Man of Steel will be at a specific point, which is by way of flying him or like paying for him to get flown cross country on a cargo jet, but like lying about who like said it was okay, which is fun. Check back in with Lois. Every time she sees someone in a fedora, she just thinks it's Clark, and that is I think an understandable response in the real world, but like it is weird in a comic. Mm-hmm. But I also get it. Like it's like in this case, it's literally someone sitting at Clark's desk.
I was half expecting him to say like, "Oh, I found this in a drawer and these glasses with the tape that says spare."
Again, we're getting like the plot threads are starting to interweave. So Ron, who was the lead character in that issue, the Prove It issue from last time, is now he's the new staff reporter that was Clark's slot, and so he's got his desk and all that. Again, pieces are being pulled away from Clark. And then Jeb shows up, this fucking guy.
Smelling her hair like a creeper.
Yeah. Immediately into it. Or like immediately he was like, oh, Clark Kent's dead. I'm going to see what I can do about getting in there.
Sweet.
And I will admit, yes. In the Man of Steel issues, I care less about it. It feels like a non-plot, but it doesn't quite push over the edge into like full-on creeper territory, at least for me. It changes later.
Yeah.
But at this point, like, yeah, he's getting a little bit too close, a little bit too handsy. Mm-hmm. But I mean, I don't know. Like, she's not. God, I was about to say, like, she's not saying no. Like, that's not true. She's accepting the dinner invitations. Like, it's not just that he's like,
a shoulder. He's a shoulder to cry on.
And
he clearly has
annoying shoulder.
He's an annoying shoulder to cry on. And she clearly has expectations that go probably beyond that. So there's an imbalance there. Is what I'm picking up on.
So cut back to Man of Steel being flown from Coast City on this cargo vessel. I enjoy him just like sprawled out in his armored form, and I get it. His armor's probably kind of fucked up. Like their hydraulics are probably damaged. He has some issues standing up. All makes sense. That's fine. Then directly below that, we have swashbuckler Lex Luthor
wearing the puffy sleeve shirts from Seinfeld.
The puffiest fucking shirt.
There's another instance of that in this, which I'm a huge fan of, and I think needs to be brought back immediately. But I'm gonna keep that tucked in as well. But yeah, no, he looks like he's a pirate.
Yeah, going to meet up with the White Rabbit, and the two are very flirty, but they're both thinking, "Can't wait to fuck this person over, and maybe we'll have sex before that." Awesome. But they definitely know how to appeal to each other. They're both showing up as sexy as possible and as mischievous as possible. And so Lex tells the White Rabbit that Steel will be landing at this airport or on this specific jet at this time so that she can ambush him, which is good because we needed to have some kind of conclusion to this plot thread because it's coming to an end real fast.
Yeah, and also just kind of like a fight conclusion to the big fight. We sort of had a non-ending there at the beginning with the Eradicator, so this was helpful.
Yeah, so Steel saves the pilot, which is good because that pilot knew nothing. Like as far as he knew, was just
a guy
being a good guy. He was like, oh yeah. The jet gets destroyed. We see the Digit is not that much of a fighter, but then other fucking Graham. So I mentioned he was going to come back. He's like such a weird little fucker, and then but by little I mean like not little because he's at his base form like a fairly like heavy set guy, but apparently he's like the fucking Blob or something. Like he turns into a giant pile of goo.
He eats toxic waste. And you get an amazing shot of Steel using like his steel boosters to boost him off and everything. But yeah, bizarre. Like I don't remember them explaining that power. I think this is a surprise to everyone. And it really is just absolutely bizarre. Which you gotta love 90s comics where everybody might have a super, like 1 out of 5 people probably have a superpower in this world.
Exactly. Yeah. Like as far as I know, this character is original to this, and I don't think ever shows up again.
Like his hair,
maybe he does.
His hair grows long too. He's got like like everything grows. That's really interesting, actually, about his power. Because if you look at it, he's got kind of like a shortcut hairdo that, like, as the rest of his body increases in mass, his hair goes from like really long, like almost like a Wolverine looking thing.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, he kind of looks like Mojo from X-Men.
Yeah.
Except like Caucasian and a ginger.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess you could say, well, hey, I mean, Louise Simonson,
That's
yada,
true.
yada, yada, maybe. But like, Mojo also wasn't known for like squishing people with all that. And like his personality is totally different.
Yeah.
But he's so obese that he can destroy vehicles with his girth. And then when he gets burned by Steel, and I do love that he has like a burn spot on his stomach
tummy.
when Steel uses his boots to like rocket him off, that he starts grabbing like oil or whatever that shit is, or you said toxic waste. It might be.
It might be oil. Yeah.
Whatever it is. I don't know what his goal is, but he just like starts chugging it.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Like Steel flies away with White Rabbit. We don't see him again.
I'm looking at the label right here. It's
oil.
vegetable oil, which is at an airport for some reason, and he's chugging it.
I mean, like the cargo had like possibly like provisions.
It's like a freight.
Maybe
it's a freight. It says freight in the thing as well. So yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes enough sense. Whatever. Anyway, so White Rabbit takes Steel to like
amazing machinery
to a
Bogdanoff draws here is so cool.
Yeah, very detailed there. Which I mean, he's definitely drawing that from reference at that point. But yeah, to like a press to where like it turns out it's an older factory that she's going to get rid of anyway for the Toastbusters. But in the meantime, it's a perfect trap. So she leads him in thinking. So that he thinks it's where she's making all the guns. It used to be, but it's not really the main one anymore. And she decides to use all the presses to try to destroy Steel. And he's got a good like Spider-Man moment where he's being crushed down. And he's like, "No, I won't allow my work." And he like lifts it up and does like a big Superman-ly. Like again, there's a lot of like Golden Age Superman stuff going on in the Man of Steel book. Like Bogdanov really has that kind of vibe, and Steel being a human in an armor, like there are moments of like, can you get over the fact that he has the will and the force to like fight through this physical obstacle, and so he does, and in doing so crushes her because the ceiling collapses on her and the whole place explodes. So this issue wraps up like a big story.
Yeah. Oops!
Very quickly.
Guess she's dead. It's exploding.
Steel thinks about how the Toastmasters are still out there. Those guns are going to be replicated. And it immediately cut to Lex Luthor being like, yep, I actually bought some and now we're reverse engineering them. And we're going to keep the gang warfare going because I am the best.
I love that he named a gang after a club that's supposed to help you get better at public speaking.
And then we get more of the hinting of the ship coming.
Yeah. Foreshadowing.
And then all right, so then we jump over to Bloodlines.
And I didn't even bother making notes about this.
So I have like 3 notes about this one.
Beast?
So first up, it shouldn't be collected here because at this point now, every single issue flows together and you are pretty familiar with every character's whereabouts. This issue flat out does not make sense where it's coming in because he's in Metropolis and he like very explicitly is in Coast City for the whole stretch. Which is kind of like whatever. It was the annual. It didn't really like come out in any particular order. It was just supposed to be, here's a side story with the last son of Krypton. Second note, Loose Cannon is one of those characters who actually has shown up. I did reference him last time. He actually probably shows up more than any of the others aside from Hitman because he is very much a DC version of the Hulk, except he's a fucking cop. And like, I say that in a very specific way. Like, he keeps on being like, cops are the real heroes. And like is a loose cannon. And I realized like, oh, he's probably supposed to be like a Dirty Harry type who like got crippled. Like he's a paraplegic from an accident that he caused. And then while he's investigating the homicides because he was on a desk job and they're like, look, we have a very dark scene with this character where he is like about to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And it's fucking dark. Like,
not expecting
lots
that.
of focus on the gun. It's like 3 pages of him like loading the revolver and getting ready for it, and then there's like thinking back on memories, and then like phone calls happen, and then he like gets a call and is like just staring at the gun while he's talking to Maggie Sawyer, and like fuck, that is dark. But and I'm giggling because I am uncomfortable right now because like fuck, it's dark. Anyway, so he gets put on a homicide
he makes
detail.
The brave decision to continue to live, and then promptly supervillain nearly tries to basically kills him, and then he's resurrected because he has the latent gene.
Right. Yeah. So he goes off to interview people about like what's killing all these homeless people.
Right.
And
he's on the homeless beat.
Right. So he talks to this one who. I wasn't sure if they were implying that he thinks she's a hooker. The way the line reads kind of could be. It's like, aren't you a little uptown to be working this far downtown? And like the working part makes it sound that way. And I thought he was almost going to take her up on it.
It sounds like he was.
Yeah. But then one of the other ones like comes in, Glonth, who I think is also the one who actually bit Hitman. He's notoriously like the glutton of this group. Is the one who bites him, and they all kind of gather together and wander off. And we get some more super crime going on. There's all these gangsters with like yellow powered armors in Metropolis, apparently. But the redhead who has like butterfly wings in her transform form is really adamant she wants to eat Superman. And I have to ask, why did she think she could? Because like we even know that like Steel was too much for an easy kill. So why is she going after someone who's like probably way more powerful and like isn't like an unknown? Like you would think they've
heard of Superman. Superman is known throughout the galaxy. Why would she think even this oddly changed Superman would be easy prey? Yeah, no, this is right. It makes no sense.
Yeah. But she tries to attack Superman and he like she tries to attack him with their weird like parasitic tongue thing. And it's impossible. No man can do that. I am not any man. I am Superman. And it's that real aggressive Superman style that we get with The Last Son. But he tosses her off a building. She crash lands next to what is now this big blue hulking figure that is Loose Cannon. And he actually goes by that name. So yeah, it's Loose Cannon. Superman like steps in, but Loose Cannon's memory is wiped. So he's like, I think she's connected with why I'm here. I don't think I was always 7 feet tall and blue and with long blonde hair, like very long, flowing blonde hair. And the guy is a brunette, he's got like brown hair in his human form. So I'm like,
I don't get it. I mean, and he's blue, and then he turns purple, and he looks like the Beast, honestly.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep whispering that. Beast.
Yeah. Beast.
Well, you're saying Beast because of the fact that he's blue, but the thing is he also changes color based on his emotions, and they keep on saying like you're the mood ring of the superset. And not only that exact line is used verbatim in multiple appearances for him. But he's the fucking Hulk is the thing. Like the Hulk originally transformed at night, and like he has had emotional relations, or his emotional state has impacted the color that he is. Yeah. He's also in that same sort of like, you get me angry, I get stronger type character.
In our defense, his hair also looks a lot like the Beast. He has some amazing mutton chops, really solid mutton chops, and then the hair itself. Yeah,
it's something about this entire comic series that has this luscious locks on everybody.
It does.
That's true.
I do. I mean, like between the Blob that we saw in the previous one and then this one, it does feel like the bloodlines. And DC was basically trying to inject some of the Marvel's analogs into their universe to try to like get some of that into their universe and their storytelling.
Anyway, so Superman punches him away, and he's like, "Oh, holy shit! I survived getting punched into a bus. That's pretty weird." And someone starts honking at him. And it's like, "What? You never seen a 7 foot tall naked blue man? Oh man, I am naked." And so he goes and he finds a Terminator display and steals the clothes from a Terminator 2 mannequin. I'm guessing, because that's what's there when he like goes to knock on the window.
This is just...
And I find it kind of cute that he tries to like gently tap on the glass and it just shatters. Like that's fine. He immediately is able to jump up high enough to deck Superman and then grab him and then toss him into a bridge. Another reason why this shouldn't be after the bridge was already destroyed. Because it is the same bridge. It's the Hobbs Neck Bridge.
Yeah. We can't catch a break.
No. They just rebuilt it.
Yeah, Supergirl and Lex are watching and they're like, oh man, they're having a fight, and it seems a lot like Doomsday. Because to be fair, Loose Cannon has a lot of Doomsday-esque things going for him. He's a giant, like, long-haired individual with a weird pigmentation. So, like, he's missing the spikes, but if you didn't know, if that was the only, like, if you didn't know any better, you might think, like, oh, it's just a new incarnation of Doomsday. Because, like, there are a lot of, like, physiological similarities between the two. So Lex is like, oh, well, you know, we'll send you the second it looks like it's urgent, which is exactly what happened last time. And Supergirl falls for it.
I also want to point out, they're hanging out. This is clearly like the Netflix, like this is kind of like the stay-in night where they're just going to chill out.
Yeah.
Lex doesn't have any pants on. He's got a double L robe going, and Supergirl, however, completely still dressed to the nines, still ready to go in terms of like in terms of
keep in mind that Supergirl is technically always wearing clothes and never wearing clothes because the clothes are part of her body.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that.
Well, she's a shape-shifting protoplasmic entity.
Gotcha.
Like it's the Odo from Star Trek Deep Space Nine situation.
So she's got a bucket.
She might
have a bucket. I would be so into this character and would demand that she come back if she had.
I honestly think that the Matrix take on Supergirl is underrated overall. For like when she merged with a human in the Peter David series, that kind of became her default interpretation of for the character. And like when people like talk about her, like that's so much of her like actual publication history of her having that human spirit and losing the shape-shifting part, that it, like, I think people focus a lot on that side. And I think that this Supergirl, if she was introduced today, would be a much more interesting character to discuss, because they go through this whole process of her deciding how she identifies, because for a period she thinks she's Lana Lang, and then she thinks that she should just be a non-binary, like non-humanoid entity that is a protoplasmic thing, but isn't like taking the form of a person. She briefly has like actually like a non-binary human form. She for a while pretends to be Clark Kent while he's in exile, and then she decides that the Supergirl form feels right for her specifically. And I think that's kind of a cool, like that would be an interesting trans conversation that 1993 was not going to have, but 2023 could have, and like that would be kind of cool. That said, should Supergirl be a protoplasmic entity that is based off the DNA of Lana Lang from a different dimension sent through to our time hundreds of years ago and frozen in ice until Superman released her?
Absolutely.
No, it should be the cousin of Superman. That is the way easier way to do it.
Way easier, yeah. But I've really interesting stuff. I hadn't realized that. That's a good context for this.
Also, we know she's wearing a skirt, but we don't know she's wearing underwear, so she may have just been sitting on his lap a minute ago.
That's true. All right.
But anyway, so Maggie Sawyer shows up to like see what's going on, and this Superman without I feel like this is not the right characterization like this Superman is callous about human life, but he's too smart just to pick up a truck or a work like a police van that has people still in it.
Yeah. Right.
Like that just doesn't seem like his vibe.
And again, like I'm really frustrated with this entire issue because the characterizations are weird. The art isn't even that good. Like just in terms of like it starts out really solid, but the further you get, the more it starts to feel like a rush job. Like with all the proportions and everything being off. I flipped through this one. I'm going to be honest. I did not really read this one. It was
well. Long story short, seeing Maggie awakens some memories in loose cannon, and he's like, "Oh wait, shit, never mind. This is all wrong." And we see him turn red to fight when he gets really angrier to fight the guys, because again, he's just the fucking Hulk, except he's like again a fucking cop,
and color coded versus the Hulk.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the fight, loose cannon gets tossed against an oil truck, and while they're fighting, he like throws one of the aliens into it, and then Superman decides to energy blast it, and that creates this huge burning inferno that sets the bridge on fire. Again, this bridge has been destroyed twice that we have seen in this book alone. But they decide to team up to save everyone, and loose cannon is like, no, saving people is more important than just like going after the bad guys. Which, okay, cool. I mean, like that is true. Like, but it's like weird that loose cannon's the one teaching that lesson to the Eradicator. Like, I'm not sure, but they team up. It's fine. We get some more about the Eradicator having issues with touching people. And I feel like that works with this sort of like he's kind of Data or like evil Data learning to be human here. Or I guess maybe he's Lore in that scenario. Sorry for all the Star Trek references, but I'm not sorry for all the Star Trek references.
I mean, it's great.
He responds to like touch as being an interesting thing, and he's like learning to be human here. And these are real moments of that, as opposed to him being like, I've dissolved my humanity. And when he's like, maybe it is time, friend. Like, if you took the glasses away, that actually looks pretty Superman-ish. Mm-hmm. Like the character was growing and it is still growing, but like that was a good moment for that. Anyway, so loose cannon jumps away and is like, I'm just a loose cannon. He goes home and he's like, I'm not going to kill myself. I've got superpowers now. Then the sun comes up and he transforms back into a paraplegic human because that's going to be his status quo. Again, it's just like, well, what if we had the Hulk, but his human personality was just a douchebag cop?
Yeah, it's just, I'm also really impatient because this next issue is my favorite issue of the entire series.
I can see that.
It's incredible.
Well, this is where shit gets real.
Look at the cover. This is the best cover of, I would say, everything in the top 10 covers of all time. This is incredible looking.
It's certainly up there. It's very detailed. We get it's very graphic. I'm shocked that they would be that cool with that being a cover in general, and knowing that what's behind them. So you see Coast City being destroyed, and you see the cyborg Superman blowing up the Eradicator. Now, that said, going into this issue, you don't know for a fact that the cyborg Superman's bad.
Right.
It could be the Eradicator, who has been doing war crimes, might be the bad guy.
But I will say this. They drew the Eradicator sympathetically, right? Mm-hmm. So, like, I feel like they kind of tipped, and maybe it wasn't on purpose, but they kind of tipped their hand in that the Eradicator, like, he's sort of like, his hair is kind of like even like falling out, so he's got kind of like aged lines, so it looks like he's decimated.
Yeah, his body is gaunt with the way it's being destroyed.
And you've got it is a very ominous look for cyborg Superman, without having previously kind of tipped their hand that he is a bad guy. This issue this is where this kicked into 10th to 11th gear. It was amazing.
So we get yet another there's another news report about all the 4 Superman. Which one is the real Superman? And Lex Luthor is watching it, and that's when he gets word that a ship is showing up in orbit, and oh fuck, this is not great. But they realize that it's coming towards Coast City, and the Eradicator is there, who is acting very Superman-like. He's now like, he got new glasses, which is good, without going home, I should add, because if he went home to the fortress, like, he would have seen like, hey, someone woke up. So he got new glasses. He's stopping fires. The firemen are like thankful, and he's like, yeah, no, it's cool. And when he's like, oh, well, there's aliens coming, like, let them come. If they're looking for peace, fine. If not, they'll regret the day I left, Metropolis. I love Dan Jurgens drawing the Eradicator. I think that he looks so much like Superman here in an updated way that I think looks really good.
Yeah, I think in the previous episode I said Jurgens was the artist who worked the least for me. He grew. I love all of them now. I don't think there's not There's no one that I don't like at this point. This issue by him is a tour de force. It's incredible. I think there's like elements that still don't work in what he's trying to do, in my opinion, just like personally. But this is an incredible issue. He's such a good artist.
Yeah. So we cut over to the cyborg Superman being alerted by the White House that there is an alien ship, and he's like, well, yeah, fuck it, I'll go fly over and check it out. Still keeping the guys here. Ship shows up in orbit and starts just dropping off like balls.
Carnage Globes, which is a great band name.
They're called Carnage Globes, yeah.
This is a great band name.
And they're huge. They're like, we see them land, and they are bigger than cars. They're like crushing buildings as they fall. And they're like so many are falling that Superman is like, or rather, the last son of Krypton, Eradicator, is like flying through them all and being like, and it looks like they're floating, but they're actually just like all falling just and we see that they are falling pretty fast because they're doing a lot of damage when they hit.
They're crushing towers and that sort of thing, yeah.
Meanwhile, we do actually have a phone call that is kind of important, setting up that Carol Ferris is not in Coast City at this exact moment. And that's probably good for fans of comic books, particularly Green Lantern comic books, because it's good for us to be aware of where one of the main supporting cast members is when what is about to happen happens. But the Eradicator is flying to see what's going on, and then all of a sudden, the cyborg Superman's like, "Imposter, what are you doing here? Like, you've caused this thing." He's actually being pretty rational, and he's like, "No, I'm going to go deal with the threat." And by turning around, that's when the cyborg Superman fucking
just
blasts into him.
Yeah, shoots him in the back and then the face, which is amazing.
Yeah. Like, messes him up terribly and like shoots him in like horrific ways that if he was not a construct would be like completely fatal and would be a lot of blood. And this is again why I'm saying, like, I don't think he's actually a real like a flesh and blood entity. He's just he is a golem in the form of Superman.
That's what I thought, because like I don't like because I think was the last time he took part of the stone slab that Superman was the casket was on. I think they get it.
Yeah, they reveal that later. They reveal that in this book, but yeah, that's where he gets the mask from.
I was like, oh, so he's like you said, I got him. Literally
powered by, I mean, spoilers, but being powered by Superman's body, which is such a cool idea, like such a cool concept.
But then those Carnage Globes go off, and we get a mushroom cloud in a major American city, regardless of which city it's supposed to be an analog for.
It's a major American
city. It happens.
It's 7 million people. Yeah, they say 7 million dead. It's an incredible 2-page spread of the Carnage Globes going off, and this is when I turned this. It just kind of blew me away, literally. This is such a great page.
And then they start releasing more globes, and these globes are seed pods that grow that grow machines, and they distinctly have the same style as the cyborg Superman. Although you might argue that that's just Dan Jurgens' style. Either way, it's the same basic thing going on here. It starts growing a city of machinery. The entity of the Eradicator flees for the fortress, and so the cyborg Superman gets contacted by the White House, and he's like, "There's so much, there's such a dense fog of debris and whatnot. I can't see anything." Which, you know what? Fair,
totally works. An atomic bomb just went off in L.A. essentially, and so there's no visibility, and I loved how they interspersed basically like the outright lies that cyborg Superman was telling with what the truth on the ground, right? Like you see like the city being built. He's like, it's nothing but a crater. And you see like these giant towers rising out of the ground. It's awesome. It's such a good episode. It's such a good issue.
I mean, we cut back to the fortress, and someone is thinking like, all right, I've got a suit that I can wear to like get out of here. I'll be good. And it's the giant Kryptonian war suits that we've seen before. So it's Superman leaving in a war suit. And Cyborg's continuing to lie about like what he's seeing, and like there's nothing, like, oh my god, maybe they escaped into space. And he touches down, and that's where the person who was piloting the ship, or like commanding the ship, I should say, rises up to meet him and kneels for him.
Gasp.
And we get Mongol kneeling for the Cyborg Superman. And that's a pretty big deal, because that's a fairly big, at least in terms of power level, Superman villain kneeling for a character like that, who we still don't actually know that much about. Like, we just know, like, oh, he's evil, and he apparently has all the powers of Superman, plus tech powers. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty fucked up. The next issue doesn't really mince words. It's the Adventures of Superman. It's Superboy, and he's being choked out by the Cyborg Superman, so we're pretty clear what's going on at this point.
Yeah.
But the issue itself, though, leads off with him being like, oh, there's all the smoke. And we're not getting the lies at this point because it's like further away from the epicenter. Mm-hmm. and he's like, oh, it's all lifeless. Oh, wait, maybe I saw something. And then he's like, hang on, I'll check on this. And it's survivors who were in like an overpass. And he's like, man, one of the rogue Supermen like did this to everyone. It's behind you. And they all like, where? And he's like, I said it's behind you because they turned. And, and then he shoots them all.
He says the enemy is behind you. They turn and they're like, where? I don't see him. And he's like, I said he's behind you. And then he blasts him. Yeah, exactly. Fantastic moment. And beautiful destruction drawn by Gromit. This just everything about this looks fantastic.
Yeah, man. He like you see the skeletons burned away.
Oh man, so
and then
metal.
he calls the White House he calls the White House back, and he's like, it was just some wounded animals. I put them out of their misery.
It's so dark,
so cold,
so dark. This blue,
and it's like, gosh.
This is so gnarly. Yeah.
And they're like, we're gonna send the Justice League, and he's like, no, don't send the Justice League. Send Superboy. Let's use that. That makes more sense. Cat Grant's covering the story. Tana, we check with the news team. They're all talking about it all. We cut over to the video game, The Death of Superman, which
cracked me up.
It's so funny that it exists. It's so funny that Superboy is bad at it, and that Roxy is just a better player at it.
Because she's playing
It's
Doomsday?
also especially funny. Well, it's so funny that in the annual we find out that Rex Leach is the person who got the video game greenlit and made. It's just truly incredible.
So tasteless.
But so Superboy gets yanked out of this, like, of hanging out with Roxy and Rex by Tana, who then explains to him, hey, this shit happened while you were playing video games. And you got to fly out to California, and I'm not following. And the real reason is because she is being phased out by Vinny Edge, but she is saying that it's like, oh, I just couldn't keep up. Like, you can fly faster than a helicopter, like or a plane, like head on over to Coast City, and like the team out there will meet you and report on you. Which is also good for us because she is part of his supporting cast, and if she was with him, she'd be dead, as we will see shortly.
Spoilers.
We get some. So Superboy heads out for California. We get some more of this like armored warsuit, just like walking across a glacier, then dropping into the ocean, and then just walking on the ocean floor. Who could this be? We all know it's Superman. It's fine.
We literally saw him two issues ago, and he looks exactly like Clark.
You're not supposed to say it until he pops out this suit, guys. Come on.
Play the game.
So we get an interview with the Cyborg Superman and Superboy, and I do like this detail where Superboy's cockiness leads the Cyborg as a line to be like, I wish I had this much faith in my power, or this much confidence in my powers when I was your age. And that's the tip off for Lois, that like, oh, it's not just that he has like fractured memories. It's that he literally just lied right there because Superman didn't have those powers at that time in this continuity. And I think that's a cool beat right there. It is a lot to hang a suspicion on, but it makes sense. So they fly in to the smoldering crater, and as they're getting in there, Cyborg Superman's just, it's like, we're under attack, and like Superboy's like, I'll jam the comms, and then he turns and sees that Cyborg Superman has just destroyed the helicopter with his heat vision, and that is when Cyborg Superman goes to attack Superboy, and Superboy does not have a chance.
No, just starts beating the mess out of Superboy, just ruthlessly, about as ruthlessly as we saw him take out Eradicator in the previous issue. Fantastic.
He also
Comics are for superhero fight scenes, and you get nothing but this is essentially like 8 issues of just like superhero fight scenes. It's fantastic.
Yeah. And this sets up a couple of things. We get a reminder that Superboy is not invulnerable to fire.
Yeah.
He gets hit by a flame, like the Eradicator picks up a flaming log, and Superboy has to take off his jacket because it catches fire and it's burning him.
I love how he deconstructs his hand. As another really awesome tell on that. The telekinesis piece is so cool.
Yeah, and there was a good moment where Superboy like can't see through a wall. He's like, if only I could figure out how to turn on my X-ray vision. But Cyborg Superman can, so he's able to like easily like navigate around him and like see him in all the situation. But yeah, like while he's being pinned down, Superboy blows up the Cyborg's arm, and that's my secret. I have no idea what I just did. Right. It's such a good moment there.
Again, thought balloons would not have worked otherwise. It's really good. I love this style of storytelling.
Yeah, so Mongol decides not to intervene on this whole situation and thinks back on his own encounters with Superman. Superboy is like, I gotta be his clone, right? Like, because he's dealing with his own identity as well as everything else. When he gets hit by a giant boulder by the Cyborg Superman and goes down because
course
he's not gonna win.
So of course.
And you get a fantastic final page where you don't know if he killed him. Like, he killed the Eradicator previously, or at least badly wounded to the point where we're not sure if he's going to survive. And then with this one, he punches him. You don't see Superboy. It's like the classic off panel punch where you can't see his head. So did he smash the head? There's blood.
Well, and there's a
down.
blood splatter right behind the panel.
There's blood splatter behind him, and then there's blood dripping, a black blood dripping on the page, very reminiscent of the Death of Superman covers that you saw. It's so great.
All right, so back to Action Comics. We have a fight between the different Superman cults. Things are getting out of hand. Maggie Sawyer has her work cut out for her. She breaks them up, but it's only violence is going to rise up because now people think the Eradicator or the Last Son of Krypton, the visored Superman, is to blame. So the cyborg Superman cultists are you guys are so terrible. You worship someone who's destroyed a major American city because that's what the cyborg Superman has told everyone.
Great detail from guys, them painting their faces to look like the cyborg Superman. Fantastic stuff there. You get the sense that it's like football rivalries almost, but way deadly serious.
Yeah. We find out what happened to Superboy. He's now imprisoned in a fairly elaborate device that's kind of pinning him. And Mongol kind of shows up also to sort of taunt the boy a little bit. And we get a confirmation that probably didn't mean to kill the Eradicator. That was more just shit was going on. We were about to set off a nuclear bomb. I kind of just needed to take him out right then and there, but it would have been nice to examine him. We also get Superboy finds out quite a bit about the plan at this point because Mongol and Cyborg are talking right in front of him.
Exposition.
Yep.
It's just a ton of it. But if you Jackson Geist, who goes by Butch Geist now, right? Is just one of those consummate storytellers who's actually gotten better as he's gotten older. The stuff that he does with Tom King now is incredible. But even then, even back then, look at his stuff. He's such a good storyteller.
With lots of details, especially on faces and stuff.
A ton, yeah. He doesn't skimp on the backgrounds. Is what drives me crazy. He's sitting in this massive fortress. You get a ton of all these little circuitry details all over them. Then you've got it in perspective. Even he's drawing hallways that you don't even know where they go, but it just gives a fully rounded sense of dimension of where they're standing, which is just incredible to me.
Yeah. But in the interest of keeping moving, we get the Eradicator coming back, finding out that the Eradicator's in bad shape. He's alive, but he's in bad shape. His hair is burned off, his face is fucked up, his costume is ripped up,
radiation poisoning almost,
and the regeneration chamber is gone, it's destroyed. And he's oh fuck, god damn it, what could have happened? And then we cut to the armored suit, and we just confirmed that the Eradicator isn't in the suit, which is the only there was there was just enough of a gap in panels that I guess it could have been the Eradicator, but nope, confirmation is definitely Superman in that suit. Maggie Sawyer talks to Lois, who's it's weird that he said about powers back in the day. Oh, and this is the page where we get it's weird that the stone slab that the coffin was on is now 3 feet shorter. So that's nice to have that explanation there. Cool. We see a bunch of footage of the Eradicator destroying the city because it turns out that the cyborg Superman is creating it all. And so he actually feeds this to the Justice League. And this is our way of being well, why didn't the Justice League step in? It's because the cyborg Superman told them, hey, the Eradicator destroyed everything. You should go off there. And he's also creating a deep fake of Superboy to keep the story going, and that's pretty cool.
It's really cool, and I love just having the JLA full page spread. You have Guy Gardner just kind of looking kind of sour off to the corner. You even have, again, Thought Balloon. You have them totally buying it, saying how can we help? Oh, you had to have Gardner kind of sourpuss in the corner, going, I don't believe any of this. It was just fantastic.
And that's a pretty good roster. Superman, the Cyborg should have been afraid of this group if they actually were to interfere. Because on this page is Captain Marvel, Power Girl, The Ray, Dr. Fate, Guy Gardner with a yellow power ring, Wonder Woman, Maxima, Martian Manhunter, Jade, and Alan Scott as Green Lantern. Every single one of them actually could hold their own in a fight against
Shazam could probably take
OG Superman.
Yeah, seriously, Shazam, just a lightning bolt to the face, and he probably would have taken care of him. Yeah,
all of them are like Martian Manhunter 2, Wonder Woman, Max, all of them have, yeah. So exactly. It is a group that they needed to get out of the way, and it's cool to set up that deception about how he did it. It's kind of lame where it's go off into space to these coordinates, and you guys go. We'll stay here. It's fine. We swear. And they all just go.
I swear he totally did it. Trust me, bro. I would never I would never lie about this.
Yeah. I do like the cyborg using his deepfake of Superboy to tease Mongol, like through the view screens when we cut back to them.
Yeah.
Where, like the view screen Superboy is like making fun of Mongol right there.
He makes fun of Guy Gardner too. He's got an attitude. It's neat that they can replicate all of him, like his attitude as well.
Yeah. But then we cut back to Superboy actually tied up and being like, this is terrible. I like, I need to get out of here because this is an awful situation. Jump over to the Eradicator being healed, and this is where we get the actual full breakdown of like what the
happened.
deal was.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you don't know who the Eradicator, it was this Kryptonian intelligence that Superman found in space when he was dealing with Mongol, but who then tried to take over Superman's mind and take over Earth, and then created a new body for himself, wearing a uniform that looks very similar to what the last son of Krypton was wearing as Superman. And we see all that, and it's like, oh, don't you remember you went to his body to get his body, and then you stole the mass of that to create a body for yourself, and you brought him here to be an energy source for you. And it's like, oh, fuck, I did, didn't I? Oh, my God, I'm not actually Superman. Yeah, exactly, yes, dingus. We've been telling you that. All of his droids have been like trying to be like, no, you're the Eradicator. We've been trying to tell you this whole time. Every time you've been here, we've been like, don't you want to put on your clothes as the Eradicator? Come on, put on your Eradicator uniform.
I also really like the goodness of Superman is making Eradicator good, right? Like and that's like a common trope in comics. It actually reminds me of All-Star Superman, like when Lex gets Superman's powers and then just realize like we're all together, we're all connected, and we're all alone, like that sort of thing. Like Superman is so good and so pure that even when a villain takes over his body or his powers, he becomes at the very least a little bit more good. And I love that. Yeah. That's such a wonderful detail in this. And I love the redemption arc for Eradicator in this.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think of the This Man, This Monster story from Fantastic Four, where like someone takes the form of the Thing and ends up sacrificing himself because he's inherited the nobility of the Thing. All very cool. We see the power suit going through, and we get confirmation that Superman can't see what's outside. He just keeps on destroying anything that's in his way, which I gotta say is probably a dangerous thing in a world where there are full cities on the ocean floor. But, you know, it is what it is. And he has an internal monologue of like, well, the real Superman's coming. Anyway, smash cut to Superman, the Man of Steel. Superboy's still tied up. And he's like thinking about his whole, like, why can't I do certain things, but I have other powers besides what Superman had. I'm his clone, right? We're still dealing with all these like fake news stories about the Eradicator being the one to destroy everything. And we check in with Steel continuing his fight against gang warfare. And not really progressing the plot because that story is over. Right. It's just like, oh, what is Steel's beat? Oh, he deals with gang warfare stuff. Okay, cool.
Incredible shot of the city that they're building to over coastal city too. This is so neat.
Yeah, really, really intricate machine work for it all. A nice part about having John Bogdanov as one of the artists on this is he makes Mongol look so fucking big every time he's on screen. He's just truly massive. Superboy's able to escape by still not understanding how his powers work, but he's like, oh, I did it. Great. Let me get the fuck out of here.
He's calling his power Panic the Power Blast, which I think is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's making up as he goes along.
I mean, that is what he does. Lois is on a date with Jeb, and she keeps thinking about Superman, and so he tries to get in, or like be like, hey, can I come in for a nightcap? And she's like, no, but they do kiss. And that seems kind of like her choice, but
she regrets it later. But yes, it
instantly,
does.
Immediately she regrets it.
Immediately, yes. But still very awkward. Next page is one of the other things I was saying. She's in full Rocketeer cosplay, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. With I forget the term for it, but there's like big, is like jodhpurs, like the big like thick leg, or not thick, like the wide like hipped pants. It's of that style.
Right. Yeah. They basically you have them the folds coming out on the hips or on the thighs, and it's fantastic.
Supergirl checks in with Lex, and when she's like, I should go to Engine City, right? Or to Coast City, and the creator of Coast City. And he's like, a giant robot? Like, don't try to dissuade me. Like, no, there's actually a giant robot coming for Metropolis right now, and it's destroying shit. So this is a spot where a submarine that is observing and tries to drop a depth charge on the robot, and it ends up destroying itself. But at the same time, like, well, that sucks. I feel like Superman would have wanted to not have them die. But that still happens. Lois is hitching a ride on a plane to Coast City. Steel shows up to also hitch a ride, and they're chill because Steel's a good guy, and everyone's like, yeah, no, Steel can come. He's cool. Like, and that's when the robot shows up, and Supergirl shows up, and also Superboy shows up, and Lex shows up, and everyone's there just in time for the robot to be
so convenient.
Yeah, the robot suit takes a big hit from Steel, and that's he has an extendo hammer apparently, and it is a big hit that like sends the armor flying backwards, which is something to say for Steel's ability to make a dope armor. Like he's apparently able to make something really that can hold up against Kryptonian technology. That's really cool. They're like, man, we can't let anything destroy Metropolis, and that's when the figure emerges from this giant armored suit, and it's Metropolis over my dead body. And that's when we get finally the reveal of Superman in the black suit with the silver accents and the long hair, which we actually hadn't seen up until this point.
Because like a couple of pages before, his hair was short, and I was laughing. I was like, man, that regeneration thing actually helped his hair grow out to that full mullet again.
Right. Yeah, it was short when he first popped out in Action Comics, and then I guess the time to get here was enough, but that it doesn't work. It's just they wanted his hair to be long when they got to this point, and because then we go to the issue of Superman that is the next issue, and he's got short hair on the cover. So I think they weren't sure if they were doing the long hair or not, but in the issues they were. So we switch gears to now a team up of Steel, Superboy, Lois, Lex, and Supergirl's also there. And now Superman is standing against them in this black suit. Again, black suit with silver accents for the shield, for armbands, and then his big toes.
His big toes for some reason.
Yeah.
Amazing shot, though. Like, love the team shot of them. Fantastic look at depth. It's just, this is, again, Jurgens really grew on me reading through this. This is so nice looking.
Yeah, so he tries to appeal to Lois, and she's acting confused. And then Steel tries to, like, grab his shoulder, and he's like, wow, you're squeezing me really tight. And it's like, well, if that's squeezing you tight, then you're not, like, Superman power-wise. It's like, I died, dude. like, I am coming back right now. And this brings up one thing that I am curious about regarding how they handled the Superman. Like, so he's fairly human level, but with, like, minor bumps. Like, he can see a little bit through walls, and he can jump a little bit further. I kind of wish they went with just like the Golden Age Superman power set.
That would have been
cool. If
cool.
It was like full on eighth of a mile kind of jumping.
Mm-hmm. That would have been really neat.
But I don't know if that conversation was one they were going to have in 1993, like that nostalgia for the Golden Age. Maybe, I'm not sure, but
it's also was pre-internet. So how many? I mean, not pre-internet, but like modern access to internet. So how many? It's like one of those things where how many people like were really familiar with the Golden Age and were able to read them in the reprints and that sort of thing. So I wonder if it was like one of those things too.
Nerds would have gotten it.
Yeah.
Would the general audience have gotten
exactly.
it? And I think the goal was to raise the stakes by having him be as depowered as they can for this stretch. Anyway, so actual Superman talks to Lois. He like drops enough like Clark Kent things that she's like, oh wait, shit, you're actually Clark. Yeah. He references his favorite movie.
Of course, and then To Kill a Mockingbird. Of course,
yeah. Superboy is like, hey, whether or not you're Supes, we actually have a bigger issue, which is that Coast City is gone, and that a pretender to your throne who is very powerful has replaced it with a giant engine with some aliens, including Mongol, who is pretty bad. And they talk about how the goal is to make Warworld reborn. Like, so Warworld is a moving planet that Mongol previously had access to that is covered with weapons. And the plan is to turn Earth into a new version of that, which is a pretty bad fate for everything involved. And if anyone read the recent Warworld Rising story in Action Comics, they can see just how terrible Warworld is to be a living creature on. So not good.
Yeah, you also have like some fantastic, Cyborg shoots Mongol to put him in his place, and I think these issues they switch in between awesome like skull shattering action and 40 years of comics continuity summed up by two characters talking to each other.
Yeah, so this is where we get the explanation. Just like in the last issue we had, like, here's the whole explanation for the Eradicator. Here's the whole explanation for the Cyborg Superman. And this is why I have to point out that the Cyborg Superman is technically a version of Mr. Fantastic.
Yeah, and which the robot that he goes into looks a lot like Herbie from the Fantastic Four cartoon show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, yeah, which was a really funny detail for them to include as well.
Yeah, so Hank Henshaw was this established character from like this spoof that they did of Fantastic Four, where they all got powers except it was all cancers. And in his case, he was able to possess electronics and kind of reshape them, which is the stretchy power, but it's a little bit more abstract. The other ones were a bit more one-to-one for it all. And Hank Henshaw was supposed to be Reed Richards. Yes, so when he dies because of cancer, because of radiation, he is able to transfer his mind into this robot that, like you said, looks like the Fantastic Four cartoon Herbie. And then he transfers his mind into the orbiting vessel of the Kryptonian birthing matrix that at this point, I guess, was in space, like as a satellite, probably to prevent people from getting access to it. And so he's able to get into it, and he makes a rocket out of that he then leaves the solar system for. So it flies off, finds where Mongol has sort of like settled on. When it takes over one of the inhabitants, it's a really creepy looking process of like digging into the flesh and like replacing part of it. Like that's actually really cool. And then I love that creature doesn't have legs, and then the cyborg version of it does.
Yeah. Does have legs and replaces half of its face. So it's like continuously replacing the faces.
Yeah, just like eating his whole body.
Yeah,
alive.
It's really neat.
And then to convince Mongol after like Mongol is initially like rejecting it, this is Jurgens really playing with like storytelling by way of just like in the Prove It, like of having images and then text boxes, but not having it all be like word balloons and so forth. He turns Mongol's ship into like a robot dragon to like threaten him, and like Mongol's like, no, fuck you. And he's like, all right, how would I burn you? And Mongol eventually is like, okay, you've burned me enough. I will submit. And so that's when Mongol starts submitting to the cyborg Superman. And then it's like, is it not clear enough to you? And then they do like a 1-page, like just in case that wasn't like enough.
I just spent 20 pages telling you who this is. Here's 1 page to summarize the 20 pages I just told you about. Yes.
Right. Really simple. Leader wants a human named Hank Henshaw. Astronaut, friends dead. Mate 2. Now too advanced to live on Earth. Leader blames Superman. Hated Superman. How get revenge? Superman dead too. He had Superman's genetic code. Could assume Superman's identity and have him blamed by the universe for destroying Earth.
Whew. And scene. Yeah.
So we find out that the Eradicator is being treated by the Kryptonian drones in the fortress, and Lois and Superman have more of a chat with each other. They kiss.
The least sexy mouth close.
Right.
That was one of my notes.
Superman walks over to one of the Lex guards and like, give me your rocket boots. And he's like, no. Lex is like, just fucking take him. I don't know why they thought that like, okay, well now we should just like fly off on our rocket boots. Because how much fuel can they possibly have? Like, Steel was not going to fly to California initially. And then it's like, oh, our plan is now to fly there. I guess we'll fly there. Like, but they take off, and apparently it's Steel, Superman, and Superboy. And that's a cool shot.
That's a good shot, yeah.
I do like that they call it the Superman Revenge Squad for the next issue, which is another like classic reference for stuff. We get some beautiful Tom Grummett art of them flying. That's really cool. I love the panel of like Steel is like thinking through this whole thing, and it's like, but Superman died. Wonder what the kid thinks. And it cuts to Superboy. Man, I could go for pizza.
Go for some pizza. Again, another shot in the thought balloon column. This was fit. That was such a good moment that you couldn't get without thought balloons.
And to be fair, the next page elaborates on it, and you're like, oh, he hasn't eaten since like a day before, and it's been, he was imprisoned previously. He just flew across country, now he's flying back, and like you're like, okay, I get it. Like, I get it. That makes sense.
But it's a good bit. It's a really good bit. That then they like.
It's a really funny panel.
Yeah, it's a really funny panel if they then sort of like fold into like an actual motivation.
So they're flying an approach, and Mongol and all of his forces are like, guys, the fucking Supermen are flying this way. Can we do something about this? And so they open fire, and immediately. Because like, why did you think your plan was just like, we're gonna just fly straight at this alien city that we know is like covered with sophisticated alien technology? No one's gonna spot us as we fly closer. So Steel ends up tanking the shots, which is like cool. And then they dive in and start fighting their way.
If you think about how much Superman's been depowered, it's really fun to almost think of it in the way that Superman, his approach would have been just going straight forward through it. He's still getting used to this fact that he's like basically not like a slightly overpowered human versus like actual Superman. Right. And that totally makes sense to me on that side.
Yeah, I guess that part makes sense, but it does seem weird that no one was like, hey, should we do not this? Like, this seems like not a very effective solution.
Fair. Especially since he's like, looking like Frank Castle here in a couple of pages.
Yeah,
he's absolutely. Like clearly getting guns out. He's like, I can't fight it with my fists, so I'm just gonna go full Frank Castle. Full Punisher.
Yeah. We start seeing that things keep going wrong. Like the shot that a robot has at Superman doesn't hit right. It's like, wait, he was perfectly in my line of sight. Why did this not work? And it destroys. The only thing it does is it destroys the boots that Superman was wearing, so he can't fly anymore. So basically, flight was just like travel time in a D&D game. Like it's like, oh well, yeah. You were able to make that distance in that time because we needed you to for montage purposes. But with all these aliens down that they took out when they first arrived, Superman's like, well, they always called me a Boy Scout, but you know what the Scouts motto is? Always be prepared. And have this shot of him like covered with like gun belts and stuff. And Superboy goes, slamming, time to earn some merit badges.
So good.
Yeah, it's so 90s. I remember like being very excited by that panel when I was like 12, and like now I'm like, man, like I know what they're doing here, but like it's so funny where like there just none of the deeper layers like meant anything to me when I was like a young child reading comics. It was just like, oh, this is
a great,
like, yeah,
cool
yeah,
panel.
fuck yeah,
yeah, it's a cool panel.
Yeah, cool. He's in a black suit with guns. So we see Lois like wrapped up in a blanket, kind of just like watching the news about all the Superman stuff, which I get. She's across the country. She can't do anything. And, you know, they're in California. So it's like it's earlier in the day for them. They could be fighting. It's time for bed for her.
And she's recovering from that kiss that she deeply regrets.
Well, both a kiss she deeply regrets and a kiss that was like unprompted. But she's like, unprompted. Oh, maybe it's him.
Yeah.
And then Superman and Co. find a rocket that's about to fly off and do the same thing to Metropolis. That happened to Coast City. It's a pretty efficient missile. You would think they would just do that in the first place coming to Coast City, but yeah.
Launch all of them.
They're trying to figure out how to stop it, and Superboy ends up catching onto it while the others are locked out. And we got the kid riding on the missile, like trying to destroy it all. And then this is a pretty like cool scene for the character. Like one thing I think that this does really well is establishes why the pretenders who stayed and became their own things are actually heroes. So Superboy, and we know that like explosions can hurt him. We know that he's not that invulnerable at this point. At the very like, even if you don't know why all of it works the way it does, you're like, well, he's also 16, physically speaking, and like that seems to he just isn't as powerful as Superman. But he's trying his damnedest to stop this rocket, and the others are going to hop down the silo that the rocket came from and see where it leads. And I love the shot of Superboy on the front of the missile, and we eventually get to the point where he's like fully trying to turn it away, and that's such a good superhero moment for him. And he turns it away. People are up on roofs looking at it, and like. He succeeds. Like he just barely gets it to not hit the Daily Planet. And Tana's like, oh my God, he did it. This is fucking amazing. And then it explodes. And no one sees anything. Like no one sees what happens to anybody or anything. It's just like this nuclear explosion goes off. Presuming it's the same as the one from Coast City, like in their upper atmosphere. And she breaks down crying. And I love that moment right there. Especially the cynical, like the cameraman being like, you getting this back at the station? These ratings will go through the roof. Real good moments there, because like the relationship with Tana is like she's always older than the kid, but like they have real feelings for each other, both romantic, but also just as like people who really care about each other. So I like that moment there. We didn't get as much of a like closing out the arc that was the Adventures of Superman the way we did for the Man of Steel stuff, where like, oh yeah, the White Rabbit story, that's done now. Like Superboy's story is still developing at this point, like him with Tana and all of that, and so that's a big deviation right there. Then we cut back over to Action Comics, and they are coming down. Superman apparently slows down as he lands, and he's like, "I'll tell you my secret when we have a minute, but like there's stuff going on here. There's like the walls have eyes and ears. And they get attacked by a bunch of mooks, and this is the point where I realized, oh, they're in a dungeon and they're playing D&D right now. Like all the minions are attacking them, and eventually we're going to get to like the mini boss and then the real boss. But this entire thing is just laid out in D&D sort of or video game logic. There's just a ton of guards that are coming at them nonstop, and they're doing pretty good. Like he's got X-ray vision, so he can see the robots that he can shoot and like not worry about hurting them versus the ones who are actual people. And then every now and then people just seem to like fly away, and like we don't know why at this point. But Superman is whispering to someone at various points. We get a recap of the Superboy saving everything, and we see that he actually does survive. He crash lands, and Lex comes over being like, where is Supergirl? And he's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I just got hit by a nuke.
And then he falls over, yeah.
Yeah, and passes out. the cyborg is kvetching about the fact that Superman is back and all that, and is like, oh, well, actually, this might even be better for my vengeance, and just showing that how insane he is. And Mongol's like, man, this guy's fucking lost his mind. Why did I pick this guy?
I might have hitched my horse to the wrong way. I've got my wagon to the wrong horse. This might not work out for me.
Yeah, we cut back to the Eradicator, who goes through this whole process and like a really like elaborate sequence of panels of him like drawing on energy from the fortress and apparently kind of destroying the fortress. Like all the droids go down, like all the tech like seems to fail. He pulls all the power to reconstitute his body and fly off, saying, the cyborg shall fall by the power of Krypton. Vengeance shall be mine. Because he's still like he actually has like a lot of like emotion now, but like he's still a violent motherfucker.
He's still a weapon system put inside of a body. Yes, absolutely. And it's really fun too, where he talks about how like I didn't even know what passion was until I was in a human body, and now I'm super into vengeance.
Right. And I don't want to gloss over the scene too much, but because it is like beautiful artwork for this whole thing. Yeah. But we also don't want this.
Yeah, this can't.
We also just can't have this be too long.
but the double page spread is awesome. You listening at home, look at this. This is really cool.
Yeah,
great.
We check back in with Superman and Steel, and he's like shooting out cameras. And after knocking out one more guard, it's like, all right, time to show the secret weapon. And they've had Supergirl with them the entire time. Which makes sense enough. Like she is able to talk to Superman and find out that he's the real deal because she knows way more about him than anyone else does. So, you know, that works. And they're like, yeah, we like you, Steel. We trust you now. So this is where they all become like a proper team as they go adventuring through this city that is now like shifting around it because now the cyborg is actively trying to impede their progress. So he's moving machinery pieces around because he can control everything, which means that it is a dungeon that the dungeon master is actively redrawing on the whiteboard map that you're using. Like, that's just
totally not fair.
What's going on?
Totally not fair. I do need to. Yeah. I need to bring this up with my DM as an idea for some of the stuff he's planning because that is a really cool concept for a dungeon.
I kind of think I want to just run this as a D&D session. No. Like have everyone like everyone be not the cyborg or the Eradicator, and then just like play this out because that Superboy issue, like the first first Adventures of Superman issue with Superboy, like that was like a level of a D&D. Like there's so much of this that could just be a D&D game. I'm really tempted to just run that and have people play it out. Mongol talks about betraying Superman, and then it's like, oh, you know what'll be dope? Well, this whole place is powered by kryptonite. Dun dun dun.
Let's see him stop us. and then a completely weird break to Bloodlines.
Oh, look, Bloodlines.
Yeah, except it's not quite as weird because this is the only one that actually has a point in the story that matters, which is it comes this issue happens right after Superboy stopped the rocket, and that's why he's in Metropolis explicitly. So I do like that it is tied into like it's explicit where it's supposed to happen in the story, and it's a side story for one of the characters. And we'll move quick on this one because weirdly, so Sparks actually I had totally forgotten about, but is a character that shows up again. She actually is on a team with Superboy later.
Oh, really?
Superboy and the Ravers. So she is a character that remains around for a little bit. Now, she clearly looks just like Livewire from the TV show.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine that she is the inspiration for that character because that character was created for the show, and that was like a year after this.
Gotcha.
Maybe not exactly an inspiration, but like clearly a prototype, at least in terms of the design.
I thought
she
looks
looks just
Livewire
like
at first. She looks extremely similar to Livewire. I thought she
and has the same type of powers. Yeah. Her human form looks like Kitty Pryde, and she's from a family that all have the meta gene. I looked into this because the way they talk about it, it makes it think that they're like, oh, this must be some established family or like have a role beyond it. Nope, they show up here and then in Superboy and the Ravers when we deal with her family. But everyone in her family has meta powers, and it feels kind of like the Inhumans or like Clandestine. She's with her uncle who can turn into a big werewolf. But they're like, oh, well, you know, we just try to get anyone who's old enough into some kind of accident that will activate their metagene. And apparently aliens are killing people and like it's causing their metagenes to activate. So we're just going to bring you to Metropolis, and you're going to walk by yourself at night and see if an alien attacks you, was their plan, which is fucking insane. Like even if you thought she would survive, it's like, why?
Stop. Yeah.
That's the way you're going to go. But we do check, like, loose cannon shows up in here, and we find out a bit more. And we also see, like, a unified plot as opposed to just the random aliens hunting people, where they try to create, like, a fake food bank and have homeless people come and they would all feast on them. So we're seeing more of a story here. Also, we get Superboy while he's in the hospital. They try to give an injection, and he's like, "Oh, I'm invulnerable." And it's like, well, we didn't have any problem putting the IV in you, and that's because he was unconscious at the time. Because he's actually, like, stopping the syringe from going in subconsciously, but he has to be awake for his powers to work. And so that's more layers on, like, the whole he's telekinetic, he doesn't actually have other powers phase. Maggie Sawyer recruits him to go after this. And at one point, a reporter calls up Maggie Sawyer and calls her Mags, which was explicitly the thing that she hates being called in the loose cannon thing. And it, like, reads like someone who didn't notice that specific thread. But aside from just, like, well, we've got Superboy running around and, like, oh, Superboy tries to sneak into Bibbo's bar to, like, find out clues. And this is the first meeting of Superboy with Krypto. And Krypto fucking hates him. And that always is the thing.
I think that is worth calling out in this. That was a great detail.
Krypto goes with Superboy to Hawaii when he gets his own series, and Krypto loves Double X, the DN alien from Cadmus that becomes Superboy's mentor. But he hates Superboy and just barks at him all the time and just fucking hates him. And it's so great that we're getting that set up here. And I should note, this is actually written by Carl Kiesel, which not all, like, Jurgens wrote his, but I can't remember if the other ones were in. But either way, we know that in all the Superboy stuff, they are setting up the groundwork for things that will be part of the main show, or the main, like, Superboy book, because it was very clear that this character was getting his own book after this all.
Yeah. And I mean, and even so, Grummett also co-plotted with Kiesel, and then did thumbnails for it. So I think, like, this was, like, the closest that you were going to get to, like, the primary story, and also really kind of speaks to how much of themselves they were putting into this, where they even tried to get this sort of, like, random extra issue and sort of tie it into everything that they were doing on Action or Adventures of.
Yeah. No, it's kind of weird that, like, he would spend so much time investigating, like, the murders that are going on when he knows that the world is about to be destroyed by aliens, but the world is also about to be destroyed by aliens here too. So, you know, it's a side quest. It feels like a weird amount of time for him to spend away from the main plot, because this has to be, like, at least, like, 2 or 3 days. But I get it. He's in Metropolis. He's recovering, and they put him on this thing. I do also like when he holds up a building, when they're like, are you crazy? Physics are going to prevent that from happening. Like, and he's like, next thing you're telling me I can't fly. And he does successfully hold up the ceiling as it's collapsing. And he points out that the walls then collapse on the side. And again, playing into the whole, we're setting up, he's telekinetic and he's not actually super strong. I think that these are all worthwhile things that happen in this. And the fact that Sparks comes back as a supporting character in a Superboy spin-off book, again, Superboy and the Ravers, even if people don't really remember that book, it is interesting that it happened.
Gosh darn it.
I do. I honestly forgot that book existed until I got to this spot, because I was like, I remember that it happened after the missile. Like, I remember that plot. I remember him in the hospital getting the syringe, and I'm like, who was the character they introduced in this book? Oh, right, fucking Sparks. I forgot about her. Oh, my God. But like I said, she actually does show up later. And we get a little bit more about the alien stuff. It doesn't fucking matter. Like no one cares about. I looked it up. All these characters are called the New Blood, as new heroes that were introduced. Sparks kind of matters. Hitman still is the only one that people actually care about and would pay attention to. And if you bring up any of the others, they'll be like, who? And, like, even Loose Cannon and Sparks is like, who? Like, doesn't matter. Cut back to Superman Steel running through the remains of Coast City with guns. And that's when they come up on Mongol. And this is the point where it's like, oh, it's time for your mini boss fight.
Yeah.
Okay. Steel goes away to deal with the engine that's about to fire, and so he encounters Cyborg Superman, but not the physical body of Cyborg Superman.
It's still a great looking shot, though.
It's a great shot. And he has, like, all these, like, he keeps building new robot bodies for Steel to fight. So this is actually a really tense battle that would be also great for a dungeon master to have their players fight. Oh, the evil warlord or wizard or whatever controlling this fortress is summoning constructs to battle you in this space that you have to shut down. Very cool fight.
It's also, I mean, it's Steel. It's man. It's a machine versus machine, right? Like, it's a man inside of a plate of armor versus all of these other machines that are being summoned to fight him. So thematically, totally
and
works.
even more explicit, it's John Henry.
Yeah, it's John Henry
fighting
machines. Absolutely.
Yeah. And like, this is where we're really going into it. It was like hinted at before, but this is the real moment of John Henry being like, I'm more than just the machine suit that I wear. I am mightier than your steam engine thing, whatever. Cut over to the Jeb subplot because fuck, we can't not deal with Jeb apparently. And he's like, man, Lois is really in love with Superman, not Clark Kent. Like, and he actually says something to her in like kind of a dick way, but you know. Again, this fucking story doesn't matter. We do get Green Lantern flying back to Earth and being like, my God, what's that destruction? That's Coast City. And that, you know, would feel like a lot to a person who just saw their home destroyed. Supergirl intervenes in the fight against Mongol, and he is fairly cunning. He's like, oh, there's something invisible, and like pours oil on where she is. And the Eradicator is getting close now. So things are happening. Steel has a big fight with a bigger robot that the Cyborg summons and uses it to actually destroy the force fields that are, or like the magnetic fields that are allowing the Earth to be protected from the rocket launch. But it's not enough by itself. Like the rocket can still fire. It's
still heroic.
It's shut down for the moment.
Yeah, it's heroic. He stalled it.
Yeah, no, it's a necessary step.
Yeah.
But then we get the next issue, and
what the hell is this story? Like, I was so confused when I read this one.
I think this one, it makes sense in its placement, but it's an issue of Green Lantern, and I can't not mention this part. It's written by Gerard Jones.
I saw you talking about this on Twitter, and I have no context for this.
So Gerard Jones, I unfortunately found out after I wrote and did a whole video on Prime, one of his characters that he created, was a writer at DC. He did a bunch of Amalgam stuff. We had to talk about that when we did the Amalgam stuff. He was found guilty of possession of child pornography and is currently in prison.
Oh, no.
So a lot of people have been like, oh, I guess we're not going to talk about this issue. I think this issue still is important to bring up because it's Green Lantern's perspective on his home being destroyed.
I had a question.
And is that why they decided to... I guess, like, it's less that it made sense.
I think it fits. Like, if you cut this issue out, we get, like, a recap in the next issue, but it's, like, very clearly a recap of a fight that happened and not the actual fight.
So I agree. It makes sense in the placement, although it was very confusing to me. Basically, it kind of stole the thunder for the next issue as well, because the next issue is the big fight. And then this issue ends with kind of the resolution of that big fight, which was kind of confusing to me. Is the reason they brought this in just because, like, it's Green Lantern, it was his city that was destroyed, and they decided they needed to, like, have that perspective?
Basically, and this is the start of the Emerald Twilight story that then leads to Hal Jordan going crazy, killing the rest of the Green Lantern Corps, and then becoming Parallax. The big shake, and that leads to Kyle Rayner becoming Green Lantern. So the big shakeups in DC start with the reign of Superman, like with the death and return of Superman stuff, and then spin out from there. So this has big impact on the whole cosmic side of things, but with the Green Lantern Corps. And overall, I think the issue is fine. It's just Green Lantern being like, I'm so angry at this motherfucker. And I honestly forgot when I started reading this issue about the Green Lantern yellow weakness, because that's been gone for so long now. But
yeah,
it was a big thing in it. And he kept on being like, I can't hurt him because he's yellow. And I'm like, just keep doing what you were doing, picking up shit with your ring and like hitting him with it. Like, it's not that hard, man.
Well, you get the amazing John Henry Green Lantern mashup where he picks up the hammer, which was dope. It was really cool. I did like that a lot.
Yeah, and I like the art fine here. Like the fight with Mongol looks fine. Like it's a cool big fight, and then he catches up with everyone else. Oh shit. Oh, I see. So I'm looking at the digital right now, but I actually hadn't been looking at the digital for this read. Mm-hmm. These panels they don't have in the trade that I.
Oh really?
Like the trade that I had.
Okay.
So
yeah.
It ends with him beating. Like, but then there are others. Is where the issue cuts off in the Death and Return, or in this trade, it goes straight from.
For the audience listening, I'm leaning into my camera right now. I'm about to look at the trade cases.
Yeah, so it goes straight from but then there are others, and then into the next issue.
Oh wow! They totally spoil this in the actual in the digital reader.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so that explains some of that, because I was like, oh, I didn't. I think the thing that sucks is the fact that that it was written by a pedophile.
Yeah, that does suck too. Now that I know it, I dislike this issue even more. But yeah, it totally
Yeah.
stole the thunder, the climax of the book.
Yeah, I think they had to tell the story because it was its own issue, but like it's weird. Oh, and yeah, this whole thing that happens after, I had never read. That's wild. Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this issue, and I haven't read these like last couple pages because I honestly
no
I didn't even realize they were there.
Yeah, skip past
because
them.
again they're just not in my trade.
right. Yeah.
Anyway, cut
That's
over
hilarious.
to Superman 82, and this is Eradicator has arrived. He thinks back on the whole thing. Green Lantern, we see him doing the recap of him being like, okay, I'm going to build an armor so I can pick up this hammer and hit Mongol with it. Steel climbs out, having like fixed everything, and he's like covered in green smoke because of all the kryptonite shit that he doesn't even really know. And we get the confrontation between Superman and the Cyborg. So Cyborg baits them and that like sets more traps for them. They continue this whole chase. Cyborg finally is like, oh, why didn't I think about taking control of your armor before? I'm like, well, why didn't you, dude? It's because you're fucking dumb. like
You do get like his
Superboy
face,
catches up finally.
You get his face like popping up on the armor itself, which was really cool. Like there's some
that's a cool shot.
Really, really interesting ideas with this last issue, or this not last issue, but like this issue.
Superboy's finally getting enough control that he's able to cause Steel's armor to explode to save his life because he's being strangled by the cyborg. So that's a cool moment. The Eradicator shows up and teams up with Superman, and the cyborg baits them, growing his head and actually having like the metal like slide around, which I don't think looks like that much on the page, but if that was done in a movie, you could just hear the metal screeching sound of the head moving around, and it would be so cool.
I'm a big horror nerd, and this is Freddy. This is a Freddy Krueger kind of like surrealist horror, like all the way through from the face popping up on Steel's stomach to this. Like this is really good horror stuff that would be it cinematically would be fantastic.
Yeah. Now, meanwhile, Superman does not trust the Eradicator. Like, Superman is more aware than anyone else of all the shit the Eradicator has done and how bad of an entity it has been. And so the Eradicator is trying to plead that, like, no, he has actually changed, that he has learned a lot, and that he's tried to follow his example. And if nothing else, his main goal is to make sure that Superman lives, because his goal is to keep the Kryptonian life going. So we get like some exchange about that. They kind of settle on a new look for the Eradicator. He's got like a buzz cut, and now his eyes don't seem to be phased by the light thing. So like that was like a weakness he had as Superman, just so they could have a weakness for him and a reason for him to wear sunglasses. But now it's like, it's moving on.
I also think it might be because they were connected on the battery side, right? Like he wasn't able to have, his powers are now derived from the energy that he sucked from the Fortress of Solitude, whereas previously he couldn't absorb the sunlight directly. He had to absorb the sunlight through the Superman body that he was keeping in the battery.
Maybe it just
feels
weird for him to
lose
that weakness and without any reference to it here. And then he'll wear glasses again when he's possessed by a human after this. So like I don't know. I think they just didn't want to draw it like. And he's got cool like Kirby dot eyes, so like I don't hate the look. It's just like it's just a thing. Anyway, they confront the cyborg Superman, and he's in the chamber with the kryptonite that powers the whole building, or rather the whole city. And he breaks it open so that they can all be dying from kryptonite radiation. And we get the others, Steel, Superboy, and Supergirl, catching up, and that green glow, it must be Green Lantern up ahead, and it's so bright I can't see a thing through it. And Superman mentions that kryptonite would kill anyone, but it kills him faster, and so he shuts the door. And it's good because it gives us a chance to have it not affect Superboy before he would have entered the room. Because Superboy actually at this time canonically is not affected by kryptonite because he's not a Kryptonian. That gets retconned first in like one of the like Who's Who issues or like the annuals that they would like do information on, and then eventually the Geoff Johns run would fully reverse that. But at this point, they didn't want to confirm or deny his Kryptonian connections. So it's going to be a fight between Superman, the Eradicator, and the Cyborg. And the Cyborg immediately takes control over Superman's guns and causes them to all explode. And then the two of them all start fighting each other. We get a cool shot of the birthing matrix side by side with the Eradicator in his original form and how similar they look in design, which I think is cool. It's a really complex panel, and I love the way that they color those parts to not have like actual like pin lines on it.
They do color
like that was
on it, yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool, and I'd never seen, or not never, but like I hadn't seen that very often at the time when it first came out. And like comics obviously now are so digital in the way they're colored, but at the time that was new, and it was cool to see. And then Cyborg decides to do a last-ditch effort of firing a hose of kryptonite at Superman, and the Eradicator steps in the way, and as it destroys his body, like a rainbow of energy explodes out of him into Superman. And we get this whole like bit about how much it hurts, and you can see it sucking away all the kryptonite that was being stored in there from this giant rock to this like tiny thing now. And Green Lantern finally like busts down the door. And there's like they bust on the door, and there's all this like smoke, and it's like, what, that radiation? And I'm like, do you think radiation is a fog? Like is that what you think is going on there? But they put up a shield around them, again preventing Superboy from interacting with the kryptonite, so we don't deal with that. The Eradicator appears to be dead. Cyborg is standing over it, and that's when Superman emerges in just shreds of clothing, like barely anything, but fully powered, and a burned chest, and he easily like takes down the Cyborg. So like 2 punches, and he's got his arm in Cyborg's. Yeah, like he's got his arm in the Cyborg's chest, and he's like, well, if I vibrate really fast, I'll cause you to explode. And I'm like, that's pretty lethal, but I mean, he also knows that it's going to be hard to actually kill the Cyborg, and because at this point he knows that it's Henshaw. We gloss over it, like when he was being taunted by the Cyborg earlier, it was like, you killed my wife, but now Hank Henshaw will have its revenge.
And he even says, right, like, if you come back, I'll be here. Like, he knows that Henshaw's almost effective. I mean, pretty darn hard to kill, almost immortal. And so, yeah, I kind of give him a pass on that side. He's been so good at saving henchmen lives that I give him a pass on this part.
Yeah, so then Supergirl reassembles his clothing to actually be in the Superman uniform. Green Lantern is kind of chill, like in all the panels right here. He's like, my ring doesn't locate him anywhere. That's weird. And it's like, shouldn't you be angry right now? Like, isn't everyone you know and loved like dead right now? Like, but this is not the issue to focus on that particular emotional journey. And they're like, oh, we think the Cyborg's gone. We think is everything good? Okay, yeah. All right, yeah, Superman. He's Superman. And he like flies off now with long hair, and
amazing 2-panel spread. Finally, you see him in the blue suit. He looks fantastic. This is like kind of the payoff of the previous 300 pages.
Yeah. And he flies on home all excited. And I'm seeing that I'm now looking at how this differs from the trade. So the original trade right after this just jumps to the Lois opening the window to see Superman there, and they kiss, and that's actually the end of the trade.
Oh, cool.
But then
that's a much better way to end it than this, because I thought
this
these
continues
two,
with them like
there's
kind
like
of flirting.
Audience, there's like 8 issues after this. It's actually closer to 3. And it completely, like, it kind of kills the momentum of like what the rest of this book is. I think I actually want your trade that you have in your hands right now to replace this digital comic that I have from my library. It just keeps going. And he like, there's like a weird occult thing where he like hangs out, and they like kind of talk about like, oh, the mortality of Superman and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this was so good up until this point. And then it just kind of like sinks back into like 90s ridiculousness.
Oh, yeah. No, we're not going to deal with any of this.
No.
I will say that the trade also had the bit from Action Comics where Superman recovers Clark Kent, quote unquote. And like Clark Kent goes home with Lois, and then Superman catches up after like having like a verbal sparring match with Lex Luthor. And then like Clark Kent reveals that it's actually Matrix.
It's Supergirl, which like I didn't realize. So I wasn't familiar with Supergirl as Matrix. So this was the first time I saw her shapeshift, period. And I was like, what on earth is going on here? So it's just more like kind of insanity. But you kind of like giving that context of who she is totally makes sense in that case now.
Yeah. But so there is a lot of like falling action that happens after that in the. When we say the digital versus the trade, so I'm talking about the original The Return of Superman trade, which contained everything for the imposter Superman through, but doesn't have the full issues for these issues that happen after he comes back and has defeated the Cyborg. So for one thing, I haven't read those. For another, most of this is like falling action to like catch up like the things that are going on with the characters in the different books. And I don't think we need to necessarily go through that just for this chunk of comics.
For this chunk. I will say, like, the stuff that it sets up that I feel like is interesting. They rescue Eradicator, so he's being saved and is coming back. They try to explain Superman's immortality. They basically, Lois asks, "Are you immortal?" And they say, "No, he should have died." Yada yada. But yeah, overall, this is not the most interesting. This is not the best way to end what I think to be like some like 500, 800, 600 pages of fantastic comicking. This is not the best way to end it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in issues around this of just like Superman being like, no, I'm alive. And what is nice is I do see that they cover his reunion with Ma and Pa Kent. That, should be fairly pressing, especially because none of the fake Supermen ever went to Ma and Pa Kent, even the ones who knew that Clark Kent and Superman were the same person. But yeah, again, this is all the following action of like, all right, well, we got to like catch up with where everyone is. Superman talks to like Batman, the Azrael Batman, because that shit started at this time.
The robot Batman, which blew my mind as well. Yeah, this is all over the map. It was fascinating.
Yeah, the important part is that they figure out a way for Superman to put himself back into his life by way of like Clark Kent being alive because he was in a fallout shelter, like, and just barely survived for the last like several months since the Doomsday fight, and we get like little bits there. But the point is, Superman is back at the end of this all. He has saved the day from the cyborg Superman. He has done a lot of good. Everything, like, and he can go back to being Superman. Like while they'll have to deal with like, all right, what happened to his apartment? He gets his apartment back from Superboy. It's a funny scene that happens because Superboy never finds out that he's Clark Kent. That whole thing is just an amusing bit. He gets the copyright back. He, gets his job back eventually by, once like Clark Kent's alive again. Like, he has to reassemble those pieces of his life, but you knew that once Clark Kent was back and like accepted as being back, and that the way they did it, they cover, which is like, okay, yeah, fake fallout shelter. You knew he was going to be able to do it. Like, it's kind of almost funny how much his life goes back right into being exactly what it was
immediately
before.
Recovers it all. Yeah. They even mentioned, they even talk how it's like, that was a weird couple of weeks. Like, it's not a lot of time between when he dies and when he comes back.
But yeah, so that's the return of Superman. And it's, it's so 90s in some regard, but it also feels like a commentary on the 90s in a lot of ways. And it's doing similar things to like what's so funny about Truth, Justice, and the American Way kind of story of like, well, what's the point of Superman in this modern era of comics? And like the fight with Doomsday was important to show like what the choices you have to make when you're in the fight against like an implacable threat. And then the stories of the Reign shows like, well, what is special about Superman? When you take away something from each of them, what are you losing out on? Like, Steel's not as able to deal with like big threats because he's a guy in a suit. The Eradicator doesn't have the emotional well-being to properly be a superhero because he'll just be like, well, you bad, I'm going to break your arms. The Superboy doesn't have the experience to be Superman. Like, it's just not there. And then the Cyborg's actually a fucking murderer.
Yeah. He's the actual bad guy.
Yeah, he's the actual bad guy. So it's nice that we get to reinforce like Superman is valuable and means something to people and means something to audience members reading it. Like, and we missed him while he was gone, and it's cool and it's wonderful. And the reunion with Lois is fantastic. And I'm so happy for that. And this is, right back to like, all right, let's get them married now because they had been engaged, and this is leading up to that whole thing. And meanwhile, Superboy and Steel are going to go off and have their own books, and Supergirl is going to have like a mini immediately following this, and then she's going to go off and get her own book with Peter David. So lots of stuff is changing, and the Superman family finally is starting to be a thing again, and actually be a thing in a way that it really wasn't even before. Because like Supergirl and Krypto were a big part of like Silver Age era, but like Superman had a big world, but it was never quite the Captain Marvel family or like the Batman family kind of world. Although, to be fair, Batman is just getting that family now as well in comics. Because previously it was just Batman and Robin, and then a different Robin.
And then a different Robin.
Then a different Robin. So at this point, it's Robin number 3. But Azrael has taken over as Batman for a little bit, and then we'll start building out that. So we're getting into the 90s having a lot of like spin-off characters, and so this is where Superman's starting to get it, but they feel organic to the story. And the ones that remain proved that they were worthwhile entries to the family. Like Steel showed that he had the character, and even Superboy, for all of his goof offs and fuck ups, like saved the day when it really mattered, and like you root for these characters. So it's a cool, exciting moment as we enter 90s DC. Like even though this is 1993, like so it's been a couple years, like we're really going into like now here's the new status quo for the super family for the next like 20 or like 15 years. Like mid 90s is when they like start to reset stuff by way of bringing back Kara Zor-El and start building their way towards New 52, where they totally like rip it up. But Superboy sticks around and Steel sticks around. Like they remain parts of it.
They're enduring characters, and the work that was done here is I don't know, it holds up. I've told multiple friends in reading this for this series, I've told multiple friends they need to check this out because it's surprisingly modern, and especially I think both are great, but especially the first 300 to 400 pages or 300 pages of this book are just fantastic. Like some of the best comic book storytelling, like comic book, superhero comic book, tights and capes storytelling that you'll see, not just for the 90s, but in my opinion, like, I don't know, 70s plus. Like it's just really good work.
The return part where each issue leads into the next is really impressive from a writing perspective, because like all 4 books had different writers.
Yeah.
Like this wasn't like a Stan and Jack back in the 60s where it was all the same people doing it. Like editorial had to like really map this out. They all had to have interlocking details. And unlike the Rain portion where it's their own stories, but with like dropping hints at what was going on in other books, like this is literally, you need to read every issue if you're going to follow what's going on. And it's a really expansive work in that regard. And so it's really impressive to look back at and be like, I can't imagine like corralling a team of writers and artists and like having it be at all consistent across the board. And so like little continuity differences, like the way they draw the tomb between different artists, or the way they draw a room that a character's in, or anything like that, not a big deal. The fact that Superboy is like way more like 90s isms when he's not being written by Kiesel is like, yeah, it's fine. Like, because like the story itself all still flows and feels cohesive.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't. This seems like it's quite an accomplishment, honestly. The level of coordination that went on between these different artists and writers, and it's a really special work, honestly. Like I didn't really know what I was getting to whenever we were kind of riffing on maybe covering this, but I'm really glad that I did this. This is going on my shelf, honestly. This is really good.
Cool. Well, I'm really glad that we were able to revisit this. Next time we're going to be talking about the animated adaptation, which after how floored I was at how much I liked the Death of Superman animated feature, and I haven't watched the Reign of the Superman one yet. I'm really excited for it. I can't wait to see how that is handled.
I think I've seen it before.
So I'm really looking forward to that. But Zach, thank you for coming on. Where can people find you? You've got stuff going on. You've got a Kickstarter coming up. Give your plugs.
Yeah. So I would just recommend folks. So I'm a comic artist and writer myself. The big one that we're doing that we've just finished up, I would say like last year, we're kickstarting the trade paperback for. So it's called Completely Done, 130 pages. It is like Coen Brothers meets Stranger Things. You can check it out over at abductedthecomic.com. That's going to redirect you over to the Kickstarter for now. And then I think once the Kickstarter's done, you can also check it out on Comixology. So we have the issues digitally, but if you want like the physical trade paperback, we're going to be kickstarting that soon. Maybe don't know when this is released, but I think the 23rd is whenever the Kickstarter commences. So that's when that happens.
This episode will have dropped. The previous one just dropped and shouted it out. But it'll be right after it goes live when this episode drops. Awesome. Everyone go check that out.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a passion project, work of love. Love these sort of. I'm a huge comic book fan. Everything from tights and capes to indie comic books. And it's just, I don't know, it's my favorite medium of all time. So if you're curious about the work I've done, give that a look. That's definitely the most cohesive and longest thing I've ever done in my life. It's 130 pages. That's a lot.
Yeah. So everyone should go check that out. And then after they have backed you on Kickstarter, they should find J-Mike. J-Mike, where can they find you?
Oh gosh. You can find me on Twitter at JMike101. All the
For
lights
now.
and Twitter are still on right now. Hopefully they still are by the time this drops.
And if not, I'll be sending smoke signals.
Yes.
In binary code.
It works.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter for the moment at Case Aiken, or any of the other new places we're picking up. That'll be the handle, except for Instagram, because I am holding on to my AIM screen name from high school for dear life. So that you can find me at Quetzalcoatl5, because I've always been a Legion of Superhero nerd and a Aztec mythology nerd, because nerds, yay. You can find Men of Steel on Twitter at Men of Steel Pod, and you can find more episodes at certainpov.com, where you can find tons of other great shows. I'm going to give a shout out right now to the United States of Women. They are back from a brief hiatus. It is a show that goes through the history of important women in each state of the Union, going in order that the state joined the Union. So they started with Delaware, and they've been working their way through as each state had joined the United States, and so they're on Massachusetts at the moment, and we are getting cool women who operated behind the scenes and had important impact on our country or on the world at large, but history often overlooks because, misogyny. So check it out. Elizabeth and Jess are doing a great job on that, so it's wonderful work. We're so glad to have them as part of the network. And then check out more episodes of our show, and we'll be back next time talking about the animated adaptation of the story. But until then, stay super, man.
Men of Steel is a certain POV production. Our hosts are J. Mike Folsom and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Matt Storm. Our logo is by Chris Batista. Episode art is by Case Aiken. And our theme is by Geoff Moon.
Hey everyone, this is Case coming in post to let you know that we are going to have a slightly larger gap for the next episode rather than our usual fortnightly schedule. Some stuff has come up and J-Mike will not be able to record in the next couple of weeks, and I would rather not conclude our coverage of the death and return of Superman without him, considering he's been here for so much of it. So I just wanted to let you all know, and we will be back soon. It's going to be a little bit more than one fortnight. Might be more like a month or maybe a month and a half. So apologies. But until then, stay scruffy, my nerf herders. Pardon me, that's the old sign off. I don't know why. I know why I did it, but my brain, it's because I'm...
Dude, this is a lot. This is 6 hours.
Okay. No, it's because I had to re-listen to some old episodes recently. Wow.
Oh man, I threw you for a loop. Oh my god, I was like, wait a second.
I know. It's I was looking at some old stuff, and that because this was a spinoff of a Star Wars show, that we had that tagline for a while.
Video games are a unique medium.
They can tell stories,
immerse us in strange, fantastic worlds,
blur the very boundaries of our reality.
But at the end of the day, video games are fun. Whatever fun is to you.
I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I am Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And on Fun and Games, we talk about the history, trends, and community of video games.
It's a celebration of all the games we play and all the fun we find within them.
And there's so many more games out there. So we hope you'll share in that conversation with us.
Fun and Games podcast with Matt and Geoff. Find us on certainpov.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
And happy gaming.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.